Hokage I can fully level up with one click. Chapter 521 to 540. Chapter 521 _ triple jump bounties skyrocket. 3 days later, the warships accompanying the naval blockade of the Chambord Islands dispersed. The beheading event of the Tianlong people, which had been noisy for 7 days, came to an end. On this day, because the two generals were defeated, the Tianlong people were beheaded, and they were hailed as the shame of the navy by those who did good things, and spread throughout the sea. For a time, the big demon with the brain and skeleton of pushing the city escape became famous, and he did his part to become the new king of the supernova. Even Fire Fist Ace, who threatened to behead Whitebeard not long ago, was overwhelmed and ranked knee. At the same time, because Fire Fist Ace was hired by Whitebeard under the premise of assassination and became the captain of the 2nd Division, it was regarded as a failed assassination. Comparing the two, Fire Fist Ace is even more inferior. Inside the naval headquarters, the huge conference room fell into a dead silence. In the past 7 days, as long as the people stationed in the headquarters of the Navy are all tired, what's more, they look sleepy with 2 dark circles under their eyes. However, under the premise of digging 3 feet into the ground and unable to find the whereabouts of the great skeleton demon, no one dared to squeak, let alone yawn, on such occasions. Okay, I know everyone is tired. Sengoku took the lead to look around and said, this time we gathered everyone because of the incident in the Chambord Islands, which damaged the reputation of our naval headquarters. Damaged? Carp suddenly rolled his eyes and said, how did I hear that many people in the Chambord archipelago, and even the nearby islands, are celebrating the killing of the Tianlong people, so the world government unexpectedly kept silent. This is called suicide by doing many injustices. Quote. The sudden remarks made the repressed atmosphere in the field suddenly collapse. However, the lieutenant general present, his cheek muscles couldn't help twitching a few times. They all heard about this kind of thing. It's just that, no matter what the occasion, their Navy headquarters is the gateway to the world government and even the dragon people. Only Garp, a naval hero, dared to make such a statement. Cap, shut up for me, say one more word, and you won't die. Sengoku glared at Carp, who had a headache for this inspoken old man. After a pause, he immediately picked up the brand new reward order in his hand and said, this time, the world government has not pursued our naval headquarters' ineffectiveness in protecting the Tianlong people. So, next, Bastius and Huo Shaoshan resume their original positions. However, in order to restore the prestige of the Navy, Bastius has applied for a temporary transfer to the East China Sea to patrol. And, the brand new reward order in my hand is the new reward amount of Uchiha Chinyu, the big skeleton demon. Take a look at it. If there is no objection, it will be sent out immediately. As soon as these words fell, everyone's eyes fell on the reward order. The numbers that entered their eyes made their pupils shrink in an instant. A reward of 1 billion. The face of the admiral present suddenly changed drastically. When he escaped from the big prison, Chinyu only offered a reward of 350 million. Now, it jumped to 1 billion at once, and in the middle, it has experienced a triple jump in the amount of skyrocketing. Feel the shock of everyone, and the scene of whispering. After Sengoku patted the table to signal silence, he said, everyone, be quiet. I believe that everyone is shocked by the amount of 1 billion, but I want to tell you that not long ago, the newcomer King Fire Fist Ace was defeated by the great skeleton demon. I believe everyone knows about this. Yes, Marshal Sengoku, this matter has been spread through the big news Morgans, and now the new king is a skeleton demon. Ghost Spider said first. However, for defeating Fire Fist Ace with a reward of 400 million, and the incident of the Chambord Islands, according to the level of danger, isn't this reward worth about 600 to 700 million, and the pirates with a reward of 1 billion, our Navy headquarters? It has been a long time since it was published. Quote. On this occasion, releasing a $1 billion bounty will probably damage the majesty of our naval headquarters even more. Regarding the ghost spider's remarks, many admirals present silently nodded in agreement. The incident in the Chambord archipelago had already made them mute to eat cactus, and they couldn't tell the bitterness. If a reward of $1 billion is offered, isn't it an announcement to the public that this man is so strong, energetic, and mighty? Just slap yourself in the face. Looking at the situation that became a little noisy again, Sengoku frowned slightly and said, "Okay, it seems that your intelligence network is still not mature enough, so there is no way to know yourself and your enemy, and win every battle." Quote. Speaking of which, Kasaragi and Akainu, who were sitting beside them, couldn't help but twitch their cheeks. However, no one said anything to refute, and his face only sank a degree. Sengoku glanced at it with satisfaction and said, "If it's just the matter of defeating Fire Fist Ace and beheading Tianlongren, he can only offer a reward of 600 million, but if you know, he was not only a reward of 600 million that day. Fire Fist Ace fought, and the captain of the Chihuahai Sun Pirates, Haisha Jinping, was present. After that, I boarded the Whitebeard pirate ship, met with Whitebeard, and finally retreated. You said that these 2 points alone worth $1 billion Baileys." The low voice was so loud at this moment, it echoed in the conference room, and there was no way to disperse it for a long time. The ghost spider, who had objections just now, suddenly changed his expression. Whitebeard is the 4 pirate kings in the Sea of the New World. To be able to meet and retreat, the amount of information is too great. Looking at the admirals who looked at each other for a while, Sengoku snorted with satisfaction and said, "It seems that everyone has no objection, so this reward order will be issued. If you think this will damage the face of the Navy headquarters, then I hope you can capture the Great Skeleton as soon as possible. Also, the world government doesn't pursue our naval headquarters for dereliction of duty, and it is more for this reason. From now on, immediately strengthen the search of the pirate ship going to the New World, and get information on that guy's whereabouts as soon as possible." With Sengoku's order, a brand new reward order has spread to every corner of the New World. A terrifying existence with $1 billion Baileys was born and officially entered the sight of the top powers at sea. However, the direction they were looking for was the opposite of where Chinyu was going. In their eyes, the New World is the place that any pirate yearns for. But for Chinyu, he is now poor and clean, let alone a ship. Can't even look at a record pointer. Most importantly, Chinyu also needs to enhance the fidelity of Bone King and Laxus. To enhance the turmoil of the world, to restore their own strength. Chapter 522 Going to the East China Sea. Meanwhile, at a time when the New World is in shock, a merchant ship passed the upside-down mountain and was heading for the East China Sea. "Captain, that lunatic has slept there for 3 days and 3 nights. Did he really take over the escort mission? Isn't he dead?" On the deck, a sailor glanced at it. From boarding the ship to the present, he was lying on the side, like a corpse, without any intention of moving. He couldn't help but complain to the middle-aged man with a pot belly beside him. "This is a merchant ship that travels to and from the first half of the New World and the East China Sea, only 3 times a year. Every time, for safety, a large number of bounty hunters are hired to act as escorts. As for the man in front of him, who was over 2 meters tall and had golden hair all over his head, lying on the side and slept for 3 days and 3 nights. It was the man who was in the tavern that day, with a cold and arrogant face, and asked for millions of Bailey's reward. However, in the end, because of his reputation, he was eventually declined, and he could only take a free boat. Ding dong, congratulations to the host who has learned the Konoha style Raiden Thunder style sword technique, whether it will be fully leveled immediately with 1 click. The system's voice suddenly sounded in Chinyu's mind, making him secretly relieved. During this time, in addition to recovering the power consumed in the Chambord archipelago, he also needed to use the character template of Laxus, combined with his own Konoha style, to improve his strength. After all, in the original work, Laxus was first shown in the guild, and only had the thunder attribute magic that he was good at. It was only later revealed that the identity of the Thunder Dragon Slayer magic belongs to the second-generation Dragon Slayer magician. Now Chinyu came into contact with this character template for the first time, and the character fidelity was only 10%. Even the power of the lightning magic that he possesses is greatly reduced. Not to mention the Thunder Dragon Slayer magic. According to Chinyu's calculations, as long as the fidelity reaches 30%, Laxus template can awaken the Thunder Dragon Slayer magic. 60%, you can enter the Dragon Scale mode. When it reaches 80%, it can reach the half-dragon form. 100%, I am afraid it is completely dragon transformation. However, it is different from the character of the Bone King. Laxus looks cool on the outside, but the inner drama is full of characters. In order to help the guild members take revenge, but relying on one person to single out the entire guild elite. Possesses the strength known as a Super S-level magician. After separating from Hancock and Bonnie, who escaped in the middle of the night, Chinyu thought of several ways, but only increased the fidelity to 5%. Outside of the Chambord Islands, he used the role of Laxus to make Akainu temporarily at a disadvantage. But in the real fight, with the 5% fidelity of Laxus, the sky is also thundering and hacking. Once Akainu runs rampant, I am afraid that candles will be lit at any time. Therefore, in order to improve the fidelity as soon as possible, Chinyu decided to imitate Fairy Tail and accept some bounties. At the same time, through its own Konoha-style sword technique, combined with its own thunder attribute magic, it can be deduced to be similar to the Demon Slayer blade. My wife Zenitsu's breath of thunder swordsmanship. This character is called My Wife. Don't think the author made a mistake. In this way, you can improve your own strength and confidence. And this process, even Chinyu did not expect that the combination of template and ontology would take more time than he thought. Maybe this is the reason for the refutation between the systems. Okay, don't worry about that guy, we don't need to worry at all when there's a girl called Dasky. The middle-aged man patted his big belly and said, Sister Dasky helped us fight back a few times on the previous routes. A pirate with a bounty of millions, once faced a pirate with a bounty of tens of millions, it is not a disadvantage. I heard that this time, Sister Dasky went to Rog Town because of a new colonel who is recruiting troops. As long as she passes the strength test, she can become a naval general. I think that with the strength of Dasky's sister, she can definitely pass, at least she can become a sergeant or even a sergeant. At that time, let alone pirates with a bounty of 10 million, even 50 million pirates will still be able to pass. Can be easily defeated. The slightly long-sounding voice echoed on the huge deck for a long time and could not be dissipated. The bounty hunters stationed on the boat also looked at them one after another, holding a large sword and wearing jujube colored glasses. After all, in this sea where the weak eat the strong. The symbol of the strong is often a man. There are very few women who can reach this height. Hee, look, how good is the morale with Sister Dasky here. The middle-aged man laughed loudly and said, Sister Dasky, the next half-day journey from Rog Town will be entirely up to you. You, the 500,000 Bailey, I will never treat you badly. Before the words were finished, the middle-aged man's expression suddenly stiffened, and his eyes clearly crossed Dasky and landed on the farther sea. Looking at the pirate flag that fluttered in the wind and became clearer and clearer, his pupils shrank suddenly. Yes, it's the pirate of the Great Waterway, the Tiger Wolf Harris with a reward of 50 million Bailey. How could he appear in this place? The exclamation suddenly sounded on the deck. The violent scene made the bounty hunters in the field want to mention the middle-aged man and slap him twice. If it weren't for his bragging just now, he would have smashed his feet. It doesn't hit the face so fast either. However, before they could react, a low horn sounded suddenly. Woo tilde. The pirate ship in the distance was clearly eyeing this behemoth merchant ship. The moment the horn sounded, the sails were hurried towards this side. This scene immediately changed the faces of the people on the boat. In the consensus of the bounty hunters, the East China Sea is the weakest existence in the four seas. The most is the reward of hundreds of thousands, millions of small pirates. To be able to make tens of millions is already as difficult as winning the jackpot. Of course, this cannot be blamed for the weakest East China Sea. Don't forget that One Piece also rose in Rogue Town, just because a hero Garp appeared in the East China Sea. When there is time to come back for a hunt, the pirates who can grow up have already run to the Great Waterway. Those who couldn't grow up were also cut by Carp as leaks. Therefore, the title of the weakest sea is also excusable. However, when there are no ruthless people, this merchant ship can also be used as a free sightseeing tour. Once you encounter this kind of pirates who escaped from the Great Waterway to the East China Sea, the drawbacks will soon be revealed. At least, the pirates with a reward of 50 million have not arrived, and the deck is already in chaos. Captain, turn around quickly, let's flee quickly, this tiger wolf is a ruthless generation. I heard that a single sword technique can reach the point of vacuum slashing. Vacuum slash, that is a symbol of the strong. Chapter 523 The Evil Capitalism. Vacuum slash. Dusky's expression changed suddenly. As a swordsman, she is well aware of every power divide on the way to the supreme swordsman. According to Dasuki's understanding, there are several levels above the swordsmanship, and those who are familiar with swordsmanship are called swordsmen. Those who understand vacuum slashing are called great swordsmen. The Master Iron Slayer is a further swordsman. To learn the flying slasher, both the understanding of kendo and the development of one's own strength need to be greatly improved. The two together will be known as the Great Swordsman. On top of the Great Swordsman, there is also the Supreme Great Swordsman, and the title of the world's #1 swordsman. However, the current visitor, the Tiger Wolf with a reward of 50 million, turned out to be a great swordsman, which undoubtedly exceeded Dasuki's expectations. Sister Dasuki, hurry up and think of a way, they are coming, you are the strongest on this ship. The middle-aged captain became anxious. In his eyes, Dusky has undoubtedly become a life-saving straw. For a time, on the huge deck, the eyes of hundreds of people all locked on Dusky's body. This made Dusky, who was originally an introvert, even more confused. However, thinking that there are more than 100 lives on this ship, they will be buried in the hands of pirates at any time. Dusky's nerves tensed all of a sudden, and he bit Kiba and said, "Captain, your ship is overloaded with cargo, so your speed is greatly reduced, and you will soon be overtaken by long voyages. You hurry up and throw away the cargo on the ship now, try to lighten the weight of the ship and increase the speed of the ship as much as possible. I remember that there is a group of reefs not far ahead, not far from the town of Rog. If you are lucky enough, you should be able to wait for the support of the Navy." The hurried voices echoed on the deck, causing the people in the field to look at each other in dismay. This kind of overloaded sailing is not uncommon. After all, sailing on the Sea of Pirates is a matter of living with your head on your trousers. A little carelessness is enough to lose your life. Therefore, as a businessman, the first premise is to maximize profits. In their eyes, there is no need to choose whether to be overweight or not, and whether or not to have money. Right now, Dasuki actually asked him to throw away the goods he brought back at the risk of his life. This is absolutely impossible. You asked me to throw away the cargo. The middle-aged man changed his pleasant face just now, his face turned Yuhi, and he shouted in a hurry, "You know, how much did I spend to buy this boat? A single shipment is worth tens of millions. Quote. If you let me give up now, that is to let me die. If I knew this would happen, Why would I hire you bounty hunters? Why would I give you 500,000 Baileys? Having said that, the middle-aged man reached out and grabbed the sword in Sichi's hand, roaring angrily, "You are such a coward, holding this sword as an insult." The hysterical roar echoed on the deck, making Dusky sluggish. She and this kind-hearted middle-aged businessman have cooperated several times. All along, they have been at peace with each other, and the other party respects themselves very much. But Dasichi never imagined that there would be such a big change in his attitude all of a sudden. Looking at the big hand that came quickly, Dusky panicked and couldn't help but take a half step back to avoid it. It's a pity, but he is leaning heavily on the guardrail along the ship's edge, and there is no way to retreat. The only thing that can be done is to look at this big hand and take away the knife in his hand. As for fighting back, with the character of Dasichi, I never thought about it at all. PFF'd. A low sonic boom sounded suddenly. An unexpected tall figure appeared in front of Dusky like a ghost. The muscles were prominent, and the rock-like explosive hand instantly buckled under the middle-aged man's wrist. The next moment, there was a sudden twist without warning. "Ah, my hand!" The screams sounded all of a sudden, but it still couldn't hide the sound of the middle-aged man's broken arm bones. Looking at the figure with a similar lightning scar on his face and a tall figure like an iron tower, the cold and arrogant look on his face made everyone on the deck instantly have an idea in their minds. This horse is ruthless. Why did you break my hand? Don't forget that I am your employer. Once your behavior spreads out, you will lose your reputation. Who will hire you in the future? The middle-aged man covered the 90-year-old man the broken wrist, pale with pain, roared anxiously. However, in the face of this so-called righteous scolding, Chinyu's expression remained the same, and he said coldly, "You are preventing me from sleeping. One more thing, I didn't charge you the slightest fee, so you didn't hire me. I can only be considered a swindle at most. I was in a good mood, and I might have helped you get rid of them, but now you're preventing me from sleeping." Having said that, Chinyu met the eyes of the middle-aged man. The moment the four eyes met, the middle-aged man immediately gave a shudder, and all the cruel words that had just reached his mouth were instantly swallowed into his stomach, and he quickly changed his words. "Yes. I'm sorry, I was too panicked. It will disturb your rest. As long as you can get rid of these pirates, I am willing to pay 1 million Bailey, which is the price we negotiated before." Quote. 1 million. This is for a bounty hunter escort mission. This price is sky high. Now a middle-aged man, giving this price as soon as he opens his mouth, is undoubtedly beyond the expectations of many people. However, more people sneered secretly. As a veteran, there must be a reward for a lot of money. In the face of this mortal situation, the captain increased the price by 1 million, nothing more than that, with the idea of making people fight to the death. As for whether or not to exchange it, it only counts if you really survive. Right now, a man with a little reputation seems to have an extraordinary bearing. But in the face of the big pirates who came from the Great Waterway and offered a reward of 50 million. For them, it was a mortal situation. The so-called 1 million is completely empty promise. If you die, you don't need to give it. If you are lucky, you will be half dead. Not even to give. This is the best way to deal with newcomers. 1 million. Of course Chinyu knew what purpose the captain was holding. He pursed his lips and said with a smile, "It's really evil capitalism. I don't even have the guts to write a bad check. I heard that your entire ship's cargo is worth 10 million, and that 1 million is just the price before going to sea. Now my price is 10 million Bailey. Of course, you can say no, and I can leave with a pat on the butt, but don't blame me for not telling you beforehand, the wizard of fairy tale, but he doesn't accept default." Chapter 524. This nail clipper is pretty good. 10 million Baileys. The middle-aged man covered his broken hand and said in pain, "You You are robbing money. The total cargo of my ship is worth 10 million Baileys. In the eyes of these little people, 10 million Baileys is an astronomical number. Stealing money. Chinyu glanced at the middle-aged man lightly and said, "This is faster than stealing money. If you're not happy, you can ask, who doesn't want to?" Having said that, Chinyu looked around the field. Wherever their eyes went, everyone present nodded in unison. 10 million Baileys can save a boatload of people's lives, it's worth it. Captain, you should understand what righteousness is, and everyone's lives are in your hands. Yes, if the money is gone, you can earn it back. Looking at the one-sided situation in an instant, Dusky was stunned. This scene is very similar to her situation just now, but the identity of the protagonist has been completely changed. What's the matter, are you showing mercy? Chinyu turned back to look at Dasichi behind her. His big hand directly covered her head under her astonished gaze, and he rubbed it domineeringly and said, "Pity is only for the weak." Mentality. Quote. If I didn't come forward, the person who is being bullied now will be you. Having said this, Chinyu looked back at the captain and said, "Tell you, this old guy still wants to kill me in his heart. The slaves hidden in the cabin alone are worth tens of millions. If you can fool a noble, you can sell them for a good price. Of course, you don't need to panic, collect people's money, and relieve people's disasters. If you can get 10 million back in my hands, I will be very happy. At least you make my boring days a little more color." As soon as these words fell, the captain's face changed drastically, and he hurriedly stepped back half a step. "You. How do you know?" "Hee, how do I know? You don't need to think about it." Chinyu laughed dryly and said, "There are guests who have arrived, and I slept for 3 days and gave me a warm glass of wine to wake me up." As soon as these words fell, everyone's nerves suddenly tightened. I hurriedly followed, and the first thing that caught my eye was the fast-approaching Tiger Wolf pirate ship. As soon as they approached, the sound of shouting and killing rose into the sky. The fierce smell of killing made the bounty hunter who was on the deck of the merchant ship with oil change suddenly, and couldn't help but take a half step back. "Yo, there is still a little girl, looking at the knife in your hand, she must be a swordsman, right?" A figure with a ferocious face and a burly body like an iron tower came out. His right hand was holding a sword with a snow-white blade, and he looked at Dusky with interest. "Little beautiful girl, it's rare to meet each other, so let me instruct you on how to use the knife." Hu Lang smiled, his right hand clenched the hilt of the knife, and instantly jumped to Dusky and swept up. "Girl, let me give you a taste, what is vacuum slashing?" Jung. The sound of the knife rang suddenly, and a dignified cold light rolled back on the blade. The next moment, the sound of tearing the air rang out. The air seemed to be unable to withstand this pressure, and it exploded with a bang, turning into a half-transparent air slash the size of a mile, and attacked Dusky head-on. The violent scene made Dusky's face change drastically. But when he thought that there were other people behind him, he immediately bit Kiba out of the sheath and shook his face. When the dull collision sound resounded suddenly, the huge impact made Dusky's hands hurt, and the sword in his hand was thrown into the air. In the end, it was inserted obliquely on the deck of the ship under the watchful eyes of the public. The violent scene shook everyone's nerves. Looking at Dusky, she lost a move, and her face was full of disbelief. After all, the captain had still boasted to Dusky just a moment ago that she was able to face off against the pirates who offered tens of millions of bounties without falling behind. Now, he was pressed by a force and fell into the disadvantage. The gap between before and after is too big. Hurry up, run away quickly. Looking at the situation, 50 million pirates are simply not something we can fight against. The exclamation echoed on the huge deck of the ship, and everyone who had been pressing the nerves of Ultimate heard the words, and they all pulled away and retreated. Want to escape? That's just a fool's dream. Take this little girl down first and bring it back to warm the bed. Tiger Wolf laughed mischievously, and once again jumped to Dasichi and rushed away. The captain who witnessed this scene also changed his face drastically, and hurriedly shouted, "You bastard, you really helped him to warm up the wine. There is a spare boat in the cabin, let's escape quickly." "What are you still doing? Hurry up and get out." A hysterical roar resounded. However, the sailor in the warm wine is still as motionless as a sculpture. The next moment, the pupils shrank suddenly, and the eyes were split open, and he exclaimed, "Block, block!" He blocked the attack with his fingernails. When the crisp metal collision sound resounded suddenly. At this moment, the words with the sailor, as if infused with magic sound, formed a huge auditory impact. Those who fled in a hurry, at this moment, as if they had been casted by the immobilization spell, they suddenly froze in place. Before I could think about it, I hurriedly turned around and followed Chinyu. In the face of life and death, at this moment, it is also impossible to suppress the strong curiosity in my heart. Even Dasky couldn't stop it. The vacuum slash, which is known only as a great swordsman, was actually blocked by a fingernail. In this world, there is nothing more exciting than these. Hundreds of pairs of scorpions, at this moment, turned and locked on Chinyu's body instantly. The sharp blade that glowed with cold light was only half a foot away from Dasiki's forehead, and it was instantly destroyed by a pitch-black little fingernail. Looking at the clear-cut cheeks, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Even the Tiger Wolf, known as the Great Swordsman, who offered a reward of 50 million yuan, was no exception. This is armament hockey. You are from the New World. New World. That is the honorific title of the second half of the Great Channel. If it is measured by force, then within the 4 seas, it is difficult to offer hundreds of millions of rewards. However, in the first half of the Great Waterway, there are hundreds of millions of bounties, but very few people really know how to domineering. After all, domineering practice is the basic symbol of the New World. A strong man who came out of the New World, just like in the original book that day, Hokage ran to the East China Sea and made fun of the Creek pirates. Use a knife to kill a chicken. A nail clipper is enough. This nail clipper is pretty good, but it's a little dull. It should be Shiyu. Chinyu smiled playfully. The low voice completely broke the silence on the deck. Under the drastic change in the face of the tiger and wolf, it was too late to think about it, and he quickly retreated. Chapter 525-warm wine slashes tigers and wolves. Boom. As soon as the tiger wolf landed on the deck, he roared in panic. Hurry up and escape, everyone will set sail for me. As a pirate who has traveled in the Great Waterway, he clearly knows that those who have armament hockey and those who do not have armament hockey are completely watershed, and they are two different worlds. Cut through the steel like armament hockey. Looking at the pirates with a reward of 50 million, they fled in panic. The pupils of the people present suddenly shrank and looked at Chinyu with disbelief on their faces. In their eyes, Chinyu was just a weirdo who slept for 3 days and 3 nights in a row. It never occurred to me that with just one fingernail, it was possible to frighten away the great pirate who offered a reward of 50 million. Why don't you even run away with a knife? Chinyu smiled playfully. The act of pretense just now made his fidelity a little higher. Although this is very small, it at least allows Chinyu to find a way forward in the dark. At the same time, you don't need to smear your eyes and cross the road by feeling the stones. Seeing Shiyu who was abandoned and fell to the ground, Chinyu grabbed his right hand from the air, and instantly took it into his hand. Huo Ran raised his head to look at the tiger wolf pirates who quickly turned around and fled, and said with a warm smile, "Since you don't want the knife anymore, then I will instruct you how to play with the knife. This should be the senior, please feel sorry for the junior. As you said just now, it's like a retreat." The small voice, at this moment, seemed to be infused with a magic sound, echoing in the four directions of the sky for a long time, and there was no way to disperse it. Qin clenched the scabbard with his left hand, and when the 5 fingers of his right hand suddenly clenched the hilt, he closed his eyes in full view of the public. The inexplicable scene made the expressions of the people present stagnate, and it even made the fleeing tiger wolf reveal a surprise. In his eyes, he thought that Qin would catch up without hesitation. Then he is above this sea, but there is no escape. But if he were to be on the sea, as far as possible, it would also be impossible for Qin to catch up with him. Messy thoughts flashed quickly in Tiger Wolf's mind. Looking at the pirate ship that was riding the wind away, he quickly pulled away, and a smile gradually filled his face. 10 meters. 50 meters. 100 meters. Looking at it in the blink of an eye, it was already hundreds of meters away. The panic on Tiger Wolf's face dissipated a little, but instead there was a playful smile of the rest of his life, just as he was about to say something. The shadow that was reflected in the pupil, the tightly locked figure, suddenly moved. The tightly closed eyes suddenly opened, and the lazy eyes suddenly became sharp. The next moment, the sound of the crackling arc splashing, resounding through the sky like a thunder, resounded through the sky. Breath of thunder, one form thunderbolt flash. Jung. The sword sounded like thunder, and the endless thunder light gathered on the blade. The moment the clanging sound rang out, it turned into a golden giant, straddling 100 meters like a horse. Wherever they passed along the way, the sea was instantly divided into two, and the speed was beyond the reach of the naked eye. When everyone reacted, the golden light and thunder had already crossed the huge pirate ship and hit the huge reef thousands of meters away. Boom! The violent lightning burst, and the huge reef shattered. Debris splashed all over the sky, and there were endless water waves rising into the sky, pouring down like a torrential rain. The violent scene shook everyone's nerves, and all the minions on the pirate ship suddenly woke up. However, before they could react, a crisp click sounded suddenly. The huge pirate ship of more than 10 meters cracked at the position where the tiger wolf stood. The shocking, flat and abnormal slash marks quickly spread to the tiger wolf at the moment of appearance. PFF'd. Out without warning, and Yuhi's bloodstain spread directly to his crotch from the tiger's forehead. The next moment, before he could let out any screams, he stared at him, and his two halves fell to the left and right in unison. Along with it, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground sounded, and a reward of 50 million was offered. The big pirate from the Great Waterway was directly cut in two. Do not. It should be said that not only the tiger wolf, but also the huge pirate ship under his feet. At this moment, like a piece of paper, even the strongest keel was cut into two pieces. Under the watchful eyes of the public, it quickly tilted left and right and smashed on the sea surface. Those pirates who couldn't escape, just had no time to let out a scream, and were directly engulfed by the seawater. Some people who were lucky enough to surface, and the sea kings attracted by the blood, swallowed them directly. For a while, the moment before, he was still showing off his might, claiming to offer a reward of 50 million, the great pirate from the Great Waterway. The huge pirate group was terminated by a knife. If you don't see it with your own eyes, I'm afraid no one wants to believe that all this is true. This knife is pretty good. Did anyone take a picture of the scene just now? Qin put Shiyu back in its sheath, looked at the stunned crowd, and said, "Is my wine warm?" The small voice instantly woke the absent-minded crowd awake. The pot-bellied captain, ignoring the severe pain in his hand, directly kicked the sailor beside him, hurriedly checked the temperature of the wine, and said flatteringly, "Sir, this wine has been warm just now, and it is still warm now. You are killing tigers and wolves with warm wine. If such a big event spreads, your reputation will definitely be greatly boosted. The scene just now has been monitored by the recording phone bug on my ship. This is the villain's life savings. There are 12 million Baileys in it, please accept it with a smile." Looking at the captain who was still arrogant just a moment ago, his attitude suddenly changed 360 degrees. When the people present were stunned, they couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva when they looked at the black gold card in his hand, and his face became hot. However, when I remembered Chinyu's amazing flying slash just now, the idea that just emerged was directly annihilated. They don't dare to be ironclad and go head to head with this flying slash. You're a great swordsman, you just performed a flying slash. This is really handsome. Warm wine slashing tigers and wolves. If this thing spreads, it will definitely become famous and become the strongest bounty hunter in the East China Sea. Dasichi stammered and reacted, looking at the snow-white blade of the scabbard in Chinyu's hand, hurriedly raised his glasses, and said, "The shiyu in your hand, if I remember correctly, it was one of the 50 good and quick knives, worth at least 1,000,000 baileys, and still has a priceless market." Quote. Can you touch me? For Dusky, a knife idiot, being able to see a famous knife was something that made him ecstatic. Moreover, it can also be seen that being able to perform flying slashes is a great blessing in life for a swordsman. Chapter 526 _ Playing with knives is my hobby. Do you like this knife? Chinyu looked at the eager Dusky. Dusky was stunned at first, with a hint of shyness flashing on his face, nodded and said weakly, as a swordsman, being able to get a famous sword is the biggest dream and goal. However, now many famous knives have fallen into the hands of pirates. It's like this shiyu, in the hands of tigers and wolves, is simply a waste, and I seem to hear it wailing. When he mentioned what happened just now, a trace of anger appeared on Dusky's face. However, this slight anger just appeared on Dusky's pretty face, and the next words that fell in his ear made Dusky's nerves tense. Since you like it, I'll give you this knife. It looks good, it's too delicate to use, and it's not suitable for me. Chinyu directly shoved shiyu into Dasiki's hand and said, don't use the knife. Also, knives are just my hobby. Quote. If you want to repay me, get me something to eat. Looking at Susho, he sent out $1 million famous knife, and the bounty hunters and sailors present were stunned. Do not. It should be said that even Dusky is no exception. As a person who knows more about knives, $1 million is just the standard price of a famous knife. In the case of price and no market, the price will go up. After all, there are only a few famous knives, but there are so many people who use knives. If it is really going to be distributed, I am afraid that tens of thousands of people will not be able to get one. Now Chinyu gave it away at will. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, no one would believe it. The most deadly thing is that the great swordsman who just showed a glimpse of his power and slashes like lightning, even said that using knives is just a hobby. What level of strength can you achieve without a knife? If you can even perform flying slashes, it's still a hobby. Now, there are dozens of people in the field, the bounty hunters with the taidao on their waists, and their faces are still there. Do you really want to send me? Dusky was stunned, and hurriedly asked, but this is too precious, me. If you don't want it, I'll throw it into the sea and let this world have one less famous knife. Chinyu rolled his eyes, and didn't bother to talk to Dasichi. Also, if you really want to repay and get me some food. Looking at Chinyu's serious face, Dasichi gave a shudder, clenched shiyu tightly in her hand, and hurriedly said, no, I want it. If you're hungry, come with me quickly, and I'll give you something to eat. Give me something to eat. Looking at Dasichi, who trotted quickly into the cabin, Chinyu couldn't help but startled. This is for me to eat below. Why does it sound a little annoying? As if it had any other meaning. However, feeling the gurgling sound on his stomach, Chinyu put aside his thoughts and quickly followed. Rogue Town, in a naval training camp. A man wearing a white fluffy coat and smoking a cigar frowned as he looked at the recruits who were lining up for the test in front of him. Dao Strength 15, next. The adjutant holding the test table glanced at Smog's expression and gestured. Watching the recruits leaving the test, the adjutant couldn't help but said, "Colonel Smog, this is already the 130th person. If according to your test requirements, the Tao value must reach at least 50, then I'm afraid today will be in vain." In the Navy, Tao strength is a measure of a person's strength. Among them, an adult holding a weapon will have a Tao value of 10. Those who exceed this value are the best among their peers. Among them, once the Tao strength value reaches 500, it will be called a superhuman existence, and it is also a rare powerhouse in the Navy. However, in the four seas, the weakest East China Sea is obviously very rare. HMPH, we are in Roger Town, but the East China Sea is one of the most important gates to enter the Great Waterway, and this is the place where Roger, the Pirate King, was executed. This place is of extraordinary significance to our Navy. Quote, I, Smog, decided to guard this place, and we need elite troops. I want any pirate to be unable to fly here. 50 strength points are already my bottom line. I don't need mediocrity under Smog. The deep voice, at this moment, did not conceal at all. Originally, there was still a long queue, and 89/10 of the people dispersed in an instant. The rest are burly men with a stature like a giant bear, obviously holding on to their physical advantages and intending to pass the assessment. After all, in this chaotic era of great pirates, the Navy undoubtedly has an extra layer of identity as a talisman compared to civilians. At the same time, it is a stable income business. However, Smog looked at this scene, snorted coldly, and said, "A group of mediocre people, this is the end of today." Leaving those words behind, Smoker turned around and walked towards the headquarters. "Ha ha, Brother Smog, you are still the same, and recruiting new recruits is more rigorous than the headquarters." A loud laughter sounded abruptly. Seeing the person coming, Smog raised his brows and said unexpectedly, "Brother Bastius, you are not staying in the headquarters, why did you come to such a remote place?" Headquarters General. The expressions of the Navy soldiers present, and even the recruits who were assessed, could not help but change. After all, in their perception, a general who can be stationed in the headquarters of the Navy requires at least the level of a major admiral. That was 2 ranks higher than Colonel Smoker. Feeling the gazes from all around, Bastius patted Smog on the shoulder and said in a low voice, "Don't make fun of old brother. You should know what happened on the Chambord Islands. This time I left the headquarters, and I was planning to make up for the mistakes. I hope to dig some fresh blood for the Navy headquarters." Chambord Islands. Smog's expression changed slightly, and after he took a puff of cigarette, he said, "I have also heard about this matter. I also received a new reward order about the great skeleton demon just now. Billion. Dare to kill 2 heavenly dragon people in public, the means is indeed unexpected, but 1 billion seems a bit too much." Many. Bastiu laughed and shook his head with a self-deprecating smile, and said, "Smog, you're not there. You don't know at all, how suddenly everything happened that day. If I were to define the bounty of the skeleton demon, I would definitely more than 1 billion Baileys." Quote. His depth, up to now, I still haven't seen the truth, at least if he fights alone, he may be able to compete with the generals. Chapter 527 Smoker Smog. Chapter 524 of Hokage. A shoulder-to-shoulder general. Smog's face changed slightly, he looked at Bastiu solemnly, took a cigarette and said, "Brother, I didn't expect your evaluation to be so high. If there is a chance, I would also like to have a good look at the strength of the great skeleton demon, and see what the strength of the guy who is admired by my brother can reach." Hearing this, Bastiu shook his head helplessly and said, "Brother Smog's courage is really not comparable to us old guys. However, during this period of time, there have been a lot of new faces in the New World. I heard that when Akainu and General Kizaru were searching the 9 snake pirates, a Thunder Devil Fruit ability appeared." Quote. At that time, I faced 2 generals, but I didn't give in too much, and even gained the upper hand in the hands of General Akainu. A natural devil fruit person. Smaug looked startled. In his cognition, devil fruit abilities are divided into 3 categories. They are nature, superhuman, and animals. Defined to a certain extent, the natural devil fruit is known as the strongest among the 3 major series. The second is the superhuman series, and the last is the animal series. Of course, if it is a relatively rare species in the animal system, such as the phantom beast species possessed by Sengoku, and the second ancient species. To a certain extent, I am afraid that it will be more powerful than the superhuman series. However, if Chinyu was asked to evaluate it, it would be that there is no weakest devil fruit, only the most scumbag capable. Yes, the lightning-type natural devil fruit capable person, Mr. Garp, also threatened to invite him to join the Navy headquarters and make him a brigadier general. Bastiu nodded solemnly. As soon as these words fell, the naval soldiers in the field were in an uproar. As a member of the Navy, they clearly know how much training and military merit they need to go through to become a brigadier general. Moreover, the Navy soldiers they were present, who were not the lowest-ranking soldiers, were promoted step by step. Even their most respected Smaug is now only a captain, and it takes a lot of military skills to reach the brigadier general. However, as soon as Bastius opened his mouth, he told them. Lieutenant General Garp, a naval hero, even invited a notorious guy to make an exception to become a brigadier general. This was completely beyond their expectations. Okay, you don't need to care. Lieutenant General Garp's character is well known to everyone. He is a person who likes to joke. At that time, I am afraid that it was also to ease the atmosphere, so I said this kind of words. Bastiu saw that the atmosphere was wrong. With a dry smile to round the way. Expression sank, and he nodded in agreement. Brother Bastiu is right, there is a good tavern nearby, it's rare to meet each other, let's go get together. Seeing that Smaug took the initiative to invite, Bastiu did not intend to refuse. However, before he could answer, a Navy soldier hurried over. Captain Smaug, just received a distress call. Someone threatened to hijack the ship. According to the signal sent by the phone bug, they are already close to the mouth of Rogue Town. Hijacking a ship. The expressions of the people present couldn't help but change, and immediately the Navy soldiers in the field laughed unscrupulously. It's really interesting. Did you enter the city from a big country somewhere, thinking that the current Rogue Town is the same as before? It is a supply springboard to the Great Waterway. The town of Rogue is now the capital of the end of evil, but no prisoner can leave alive. The captain was hijacked, and he dared to come to Rogue Town in a grand manner, but he hit the gun, and I haven't seen Captain Smaug take a shot for a long time. The scene suddenly became noisy, and more of it was abusive laughter. Faced with this scene, Smaug was holding a cigar and said with a hint of excitement on his face, Brother Basti, it seems that the matter of drinking will be delayed a little or two. However, to solve this kind of thing, it's just a matter of hand, you can just wait a moment or two. Seeing Smaug who Yuyu wanted to try, Bastiu couldn't help but be startled, and said, since Brother Smaug has official business, then I have to join in the fun and see how famous he is in Donghai recently. Smoky means, quote, hee hee, brother, you raised me high, let's go now. With a dry laugh, Smaug took the lead in choosing the right direction, turning into smoke and plundering away. For Smaller, Karp was a little unhappy when he made an extraordinary promotion to a brigadier general who was not well known. After all, he's been stuck in the captain's position for far too long. At the moment, he was suddenly crawled on his head, and he couldn't swallow this breath more or less. Now have the opportunity to show one or two in front of Bastius, who was the vice admiral of the Navy headquarters, which undoubtedly aroused the momentum of Smoker. For a time, the two quickly chased away to the port one after the other. A large group of Navy soldiers eager to watch the play followed. However, as they got closer to the port, Smaug and Basti frowned. According to their experience, if there are big pirates approaching the port, the merchants, civilians, and coolies who gather at the dock should flee in all directions. However, now the goal is to rush in from all directions with excited people on their faces. That appearance, it is simply to go with the heart of watching the fun. Smaug, it seems that this matter is not as simple as I imagined, so don't make a reckless shot later. Bastiu hurriedly reminded. However, in the face of this persuasion, Smaug snorted disdainfully, HMPH, this is my territory, I will not allow any sin to breed in my territory, no matter who he is. Captain Smalls is right. We support Captain Smokey. A group of naval soldiers, obviously not forgetting to join in the fun, hurriedly shouted and cheered. Seeing this scene, Bastiu's face was helpless. Just as he was about to say something, the sight of the dock caught his eye, but his pupils contracted suddenly, and his eye sockets almost split. I saw that there were 3 or 4 layers on the inside and outside, which seemed to be a watertight encirclement. A sea king with a size of dozens of meters is being placed on the dock. The fiery flame, under the throbbing, was burning like a sea snake-like giant sea king, making a sizzling fat-burning sound. An unusual scent rushed towards the face following the sea breeze. Looking at this posture, they finally knew why the pier was so lively. The person who can set up the sea kings and burn them is definitely not an ordinary person. Thinking of this, Bastiu hurriedly opened his mouth to say something, but when he saw Smaug beside him, his face sank, and he took the lead in roaring. You bastard, dare to make trouble in Rog Town, today the Ten Wong Lousy is here, and I want to take you down. Chapter 528 Along with the awe-inspiring roar, the Navy soldiers present, and even all the onlookers in the field, were alarmed. Many people were stunned at first, and after seeing Smaug's appearance clearly, they immediately showed ecstasy on their faces. It's Captain Smoke, this arrogant guy will definitely be taken down. Udon, that guy dares to hijack you and burn your ship, it won't be any better. When a group of pot-bellied businessmen saw Smaug, they quickly comforted Udon, who was about to cry without tears. When he returned to the voyage, he thought that without knowing it, he informed Rog Town about the robbery. He never thought that when Chin Yu got off the boat, he immediately caught a sea king, smashed his boat, and set it up and burned it. If you didn't see it with your own eyes, who would believe that there are such crazy people in this world? Seeing the appearance of Smoker, Udon seemed to have caught a life-saving straw. In his eyes, Smaug was the strongest navy in the East China Sea, and he would definitely capture this arrogant man. White smoke ejector. Boom. The violent explosion of gas exploded in an instant. Endless white smoke spewed out from under Smoker like a frenzy. The whole person is like a rocket, plundering towards Chin Yu violently. Just a few hundred meters, but in the blink of an eye. Before everyone could react, Smaug appeared first, behind Chin Yu. Looking at the back who seemed unable to react in time, Smoker held the corner of his mouth with a cigar, slightly upturned, revealing a playful smile. Do not. It should be said that the Navy soldiers present and even those businessmen were no exception, and the only thought came to their minds. Got it. White fist. With a low voice, Smaug smashed directly at the back of Chin Yu's head. The distance so close at hand makes it impossible to hide. However, this idea just sprouted in everyone's mind. The next moment, the scene that entered the eye made people's pupils shrink suddenly. Call out. Holding the might of Wan Jun, the fist wrapped in white mist just approached behind Chin Yu. Chin Yu's upper body, as if he had eyes, moved slightly to avoid the attack. It's just that the next scene is even more unacceptable than the seemingly safe and dangerous gesture. Dasky, where is my spice? Chinyu took out his nostrils and looked at the dumbfounded Dasky beside him. Before getting an answer, he saw the spices on the ground and leaned over to pick up the cumin. As a barbecue sea snake, cumin and coriander are indispensable. Looking at this understated gesture, Smog was startled, and his face suddenly became unbearable. He is willing to see the enemy face him with despair and fear. Worst of all, he also said something provocative and disdainful, so that he could lay the groundwork for the next face slap in public. However, the scene of the sudden attack is now regarded as air and can be avoided. This scene made his face completely unbearable. White fist machine gun. Smog roared, his hands were like machine guns, and under the white mist, he shot towards Chinyu's back. The speed is so fast, the whole world is filled with smoke, and the shadows of the fists overlap vertically and horizontally. However, in the face of all these, the intensive torch-like attacks, Chinyu swept along the fist wind like catkins. Under the attack of the fist shadows in the sky, even the corners of the clothes were not stained. Absolute strength suppression. Seeing this scene, as long as you are not a fool, you can see the clue of the situation in front of you. In their eyes, it is known as the strongest admiral in the East China Sea. Even if the opponent's clothes Kakuzu can't touch, the difference in strength is obvious. Feeling the change in the atmosphere around him, Smog's face turned gloomy to ultimate. Under the endless smog on his body, he turned into 7 or 8 smoky fists in the void, and attacked Chinyu in a combined attack. You bastard, you don't want to hide, and have a fight with me. A hysterical roar echoed in all directions. However, before the attack approached, Bastius exclaimed in exclamation and preemptively sounded. Smog, hurry up and withdraw the attack. The violent exclamation made Smog stunned. But the arrow had to be thrown on the string, and the only thing he could do was to stare at the figure in front of him with his back turned to him. However, before he could react, there was nothing in front of him, and the moment when the shadows of fists in the sky collided, that abominable figure disappeared out of thin air. The crackling thunder arc sounded behind Smog, and an illusion of chills in the spine swept through Smog's whole body. He didn't have time to think about it, and hurriedly turned his head to look behind him. The first person to enter the goal was to overlook the relatively light gaze, and the words that fell in his ear shook Smaller's nerves. It's the first time I've heard that someone likes being beaten. The moment the words fell, Chinyu's 5 fingers suddenly clenched tightly. Armament hockey was as black as ink. Lightning fist. Boom. With a punch, it was so close at hand that it was impossible to hide. Everyone just had time to see a lightning strike directly on Smog's back. Accompanied by the deafening thunder explosion, the whole person flew upside down like a cannonball. Boom. The huge impact force caused the merchant ship anchored hundreds of meters away to be smashed into a deep pit of 7 or 8 meters. The thick deck and the keel burst into cobweb-like cracks, spreading to most of the hull. Looking at the moment before, they had placed high hopes on Smog, who was chasing him as the strongest naval general in the East China Sea. Immediately, the flower in front of him was smashed into the air. This is a fake punch. A hopeful thought sprouted in the minds of many people. Especially the Navy soldiers who followed Smoker were no exception. On the stiff cheek muscles, he put on a smile and said, Captain Smog, just kidding, he hasn't played against anyone for a long time, this must be a warm-up. He is a natural devil fruit person, and he is showing us how to deal with a vicious enemy, so he deliberately punched a combination of false punches. It must be like this. Look, Captain Smoker has reappeared unscathed. One after another urgent cries came out from the mouths of the onlookers. In their eyes, Smoker may not have the strength of a lieutenant general and a general of the Navy headquarters. However, Smaller is an undefeated record for them. Watching Smog stand up in the ruins, the moment he clenched his fingers, his face was even more ecstatic. Captain Smoker finally uses this trick. The exclamations sounded one after another, and Bastius was completely brought into the rhythm, and he forgot what he said to his lips for a moment. However, when he saw what was in Smoker's hands, a look of ecstasy on his face. Chapter 529 10 hands. This is Smoker's weapon against those with devil fruit abilities. As Smoker's predecessor, Bastius instantly recognized the origin of this weapon. The most important thing is that Bastius also recognized the origin of this man with a tugging face and a lightning scar on his face. If he guessed correctly, he is Lieutenant General Karp, who threatened to take Laxus as a brigadier general. Right now, I made a mistake and made myself and Smoker collide. If Smog can be surprised, he will defeat Chinyu with 10 hands. He will take this opportunity to come out to round the field, and maybe Smog will be favored by Sengoku and be promoted to brigadier general. You can also sell a good person yourself and invite this Laxus to join the Navy headquarters. This is a plan to kill two birds with one stone. Thinking of this, Bastius's face showed a hint of ecstasy, and he hurriedly looked at Smog. Smoke field. Smog roared, and in the short fight just now, the crackling sound of the thunder arc had already flashed in his mind, the natural devil fruit ability mentioned by Bastius. Now being hit by a punch, and the unhappiness in my heart just now, it is completely the addition of new hatred and old hatred. With a roar in the mouth, the endless smoke dormant in the body exploded like a frenzy of white snow. In an instant, the entire estuary was covered by endless white smoke, blocking everyone's sight. Before everyone could react, Smog quickly passed through the endless white fog like a snake, and appeared in front of Chinyu, who was locked. When the hands and fingers suddenly clenched, the 10 hands in their hands, a roar of anger rose up. Boy, if you want to blame it, you are too arrogant and revealing too much flaws. Although the 10 hands I used are Halu stone, this is also part of the victory. Boom. The dull collision sound resounded suddenly. As soon as Smog spoke, the 10 hands in his hands slammed into Chinyu's chest. The huge strength and the wind and waves it brought up slightly blew the smoke shrouded in the mouth of the sea. And Smoker leans toward himself in order to be able to see the scale of victory in time. There was no time to think about it, and the smoke from the sky was swallowed up like a whale, and it was rolled back into the body. However, before everyone could cheer for victory, an indifferent voice fell in his ears. Did you plug me with something just now? Chinyu suddenly raised his head and met Smog's astonished gaze. Immediately before everyone's eyes, he lowered his head and glanced at the 10 hands resting on his chest. The pitch-black armament hockey covered his entire body, and now Chinyu's posture was like a steel orangutan. Thief bright. Before he could wait, Smog reacted, and Chinyu clasped 10 hands with his right hand. Under the sudden force of the 5 fingers, a crisp click sounded suddenly. Looking at the 10 hands, they were snapped off like a piece of paper. When Bastius's pupils shrank suddenly, he shouted in a hurry, Smog, hurry up, you are not his opponent. Anxious scream, shaking everyone's nerves. When Smog woke up suddenly, in such a close distance, when he wanted to withdraw suddenly, the words that floated in his ear made his pupils shrink again. I caught you, I don't like being inserted, you should taste the taste of Halu stone yourself. When the words fell, Smog felt his abdomen, and was pushed straight by 10 hard hands. At the moment of a slight touch, a feeling of powerlessness, as if wanting to die, made Smog lose his strength. However, all of this was just the beginning. When he met Chinyu's light gaze, the other hand was already on his shoulder. Furious Volt. Boom. The violent thunder force dormant in Chinyu's body was suddenly detonated. Under the splash of thunder light, it raged like a thunder snake, directly covering the weak Smog. It can be said that Smoker, who was countered by 10 hands, is now like fish on the chopping board. Let alone a counterattack, there is no chance of elementalization. It was accompanied by a deafening thunderous explosion. Under the violent wind wave, most of the onlookers were directly overturned. The sturdy slate floor was the first to be overwhelmed and burst into cobweb-like cracks, quickly spreading around. At the same time, even the sea snake in the barbecue was directly smashed. After everything calmed down, the huge estuary suddenly became a mess. In the center of the explosion that looked like ruins, except for the figure that still looked arrogant, Smog, who was held in his hands like a dead dog, whose life and death were uncertain, made his pupils shrink suddenly, and his eye sockets almost split. In their minds, a frightening thought flashed first. The invincible legend of the East China Sea has fallen. Known as the last stop to guard the East China Sea, Smog, the smoker known as the patron saint of Rog Town, could not even reach his backhand in front of everyone's eyes. Lost like a dead dog. If you don't see it with your own eyes, who wants to believe this is true? Do you want him? Qin Yu glanced at Bastiu, who looked startled, and threw Smog over. Boom. Bastiu subconsciously took Smog over, looking at him, who was still full of white smoke and completely lost consciousness. He couldn't get back to his senses. He heard it in the middle of the Navy headquarters, and learned that Karp invited a man named Laxus to become the Brigadier General of the headquarters. But in Bastiu's eyes, Qin Yu's strength should be similar to Smog. However, now present in front of the eyes, it is an overwhelming rolling victory. In particular, that full-body armament Hokage. Looking at the naval headquarters, only a lieutenant general can barely do it. With such a calm attitude like Qin Yu, the only lieutenant general flashed in Bastiu's mind. Ghost Bamboo Virgo. That is known as the most defensive existence among the lieutenant generals. To a certain extent, he still pressed Bastiu. At this moment, Bastius finally understood why Lieutenant General Garp invited the person in front of him to join the Navy headquarters. It can be said that becoming a brigadier general is a talent. At least a major general is needed. Do not. The identity of the lieutenant general may be able to reflect the shocking feeling of this scene. Thinking of this, Bastiu ignored the smoker in his hand and threw it to the Navy soldiers beside him like a dead dog. He hurriedly said, "Your Excellency Laxus, I'm Vice Admiral Bastiu of the Navy headquarters. I have something to discuss with you." "Lieutenant Admiral." The onlookers present gasped directly. The embarrassed Udon seemed to have caught a life-saving straw at this moment, and shouted in a hurry, "Lord Lieutenant General, you have to be the master of the villain. This person not only robbed me of more than 10 million Baileys, but also took me the boat smashed and burned the Sea Kings. The adults must call the shots for me, otherwise the villains would rather jump into the sea." Chapter 530 Create Fairy Tale. Jump into the sea. Bastiu glanced at Udon, and immediately snorted coldly, "Come on, let me watch him jump into the sea. If he doesn't jump, throw him into the sea. If Smoker wakes up, let him investigate this group of people thoroughly to see if they have done anything illegal. And this Brigadier General who Lieutenant General Karp intends to recruit exceptionally, how could it be possible to hijack your ship?" A hysterical roar echoed on the pier like thunder. Everyone in the field couldn't help but be stunned. In particular, Udon, who was shouting at Qin Yu to bring him to justice just a moment ago. "Now I can't wait to give myself dozens of mouths directly, and I have the heart to cry to death." It's just that, looking at the Navy soldiers quickly surrounding him, he doesn't want to die now and has to die. "Blah, Mr. Laxus, where are you going now?" Dusky looked at this scene, raised her glasses, held Shiyu in her hands, and quickly followed. "Where are you going? Does this have anything to do with you? Didn't you come to Rog Town to conduct the naval recruit assessment? The smoker over there is the person in charge of Rog Town." Qin Yu glanced at Dasichi, rudely said, "Right now, there is no way to eat this barbecued Sea King snake with salt and pepper, and its belly is growling." Dasuke glanced at him, and Smog, who was unconscious like a dead dog, quickly shook his head and said, I don't want to take the test for the time being. Mr. Laxus, aren't you hungry? Why don't I go and feed you? I remember there was a nice hotel up front. Below. Hotel. Chinyu couldn't help but startle for a moment, really doubting whether Dasichi was a typical silly white sweet. Not only the below, but also the hotel. However, these messy thoughts were quickly left behind by Chinyu. Looking at the noodle restaurant not far away, it is better to go to the next order to satisfy your hunger. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, the fidelity of the characters has reached 15%, and the new skill, Thunder Smashing Waves, has been unlocked. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, you have obtained 100 World Shock Points, the current Shock Point balance is 1103 points, and the distance to unlock the new limit randomly requires 6,000 points. 2 system prompts echoed in Chinyu's mind. Seeing that the attributes of the character panel had improved, Chinyu turned over Byakugan helplessly. According to the speed of this progress, I don't know that it will take the year of the monkey and the horse moon to increase the strength. However, at least one thing can be confirmed, pretending is a shortcut to increasing realism. It's just that the improvement is a little smaller. What Chinyu has to do is how to increase the level of fidelity. Mr. Laxus, I want to know what fairy tale is in your mouth. Is it a group? Dusky's voice suddenly sounded. Chinyu raised his brows, put down the chopsticks in his hand, looked at Dasichi who was full of urgency, and thought of a good solution. Laxus has set his focus on becoming the president of Fairy Tale. For the guild, it can be said that he has an eager heart. It can be said that if you follow the example of Fairy Tale and open a Fairy Tale guild in this world, it may be easier and increase the realism of the characters. Thinking of this, Chinyu's expression was still cold and arrogant. Under Dasiki's astonished eyes, he reached out and rubbed her head. Do you want to join Fairy Tale? However, let me tell you, Fairy Tale is not the same as the Navy, we just act according to the good in our hearts, and freedom is one of the characteristics of fairies. The most important thing is that we are not paid and you are the first member. Poof. A splash sounded abruptly, followed by Bastius who was eating below him, spit out a mouthful of old face. Originally, listening to Chinyu's speech in the first half, he was still righteous and awe-inspiring. The next half of the words made Bastius almost laugh. If it weren't for Chinyu's face, Bastius would probably spray his face dozens of meters away. It's just that before he could react, the words that came into his ears made Bastius froze in shock. I'm willing to join Fairy Tale. Dusky hurriedly said, subconsciously clenching Shiyu in her hands with a desperate look on her face. It didn't seem like a joke at all, and the moment before, she was talking about Dasuki who came to Rog Town to participate in the recruit assessment. In the blink of an eye, he joined a so-called guild without pay, and was the first member. This huge gap made Bastius unable to return to his senses. At least in Bastius's eyes, the Navy headquarters is quite good. Since you joined Fairy Tale, let's leave the mark of the fairy for you first. Chinyu looked at Dasichi lightly and said, you can choose any place. Any one place. Dasuki lowered her head subconsciously, and looked at Xiaolongbao, which was beginning to take shape. After all, in this world, there is no shortage of people with tattoos. Moreover, many people's clothes are too bold, and the position of the tattoo is also more prominent. The most important point is that the man looks and feels very fond of it. Now that Chinyu suddenly made this request, Dasichi was obviously preconceived. Looking at Dasichi who was suddenly thinking about it, Chinyu couldn't help but rolled his eyes and flicked her forehead with his backhand. Just keep it on the back of your hand. While talking, Chinyu's right hand magic power directly covered the back of Dasiki's hand. Before she could react, a pink fairy mark appeared on the back of Dusky's hand. Ding dong, congratulations to the host, the fidelity of Laxus character template has increased by 15%, and the current fidelity is 30%. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining the Thunder Dragon Slayer magic. The ethereal prompting sound of the system made Chinyu frown, feeling the 3 new dragon-slaying spells in his mind, which seemed very unexpected. If he had known earlier that the establishment of an empty shell fairies guild would be able to make the fidelity reach the critical line of 30% in an instant, Chinyu would not have hesitated and would have opened it early. However, this also shows from the side that the route Chinyu is taking now is correct. Perhaps, as long as fairy tale grows in this world, the character template of Laxus will reach the limit beyond the original book, no exception. Thinking of this, Chinyu became a little excited. Is this enough? Dusky looked at the fairy tale mark on the back of his hand, a little unable to react. In her eyes, to join a group, even if there is no benefit, at least there must be a confirmation procedure. For example, when joining the Navy branch, you also need to sign several so-called agreements, so as to prove the so-called identity in the future. Now this initiation ceremony, the shabby level, just makes people feel like being pulled into a pirate ship. Chapter 531 When fate arrives, it will be automatically delivered to your door. What else do you want? Do you want some unspoken rules or something? Chinyu rolled his eyes and said, the people who can join the guild are 1 in 100. We are taking the elite route. Only by using limited resources on a few people can we quickly increase the overall strength. Otherwise, no matter how many people there are, it's just nonsense. Having said that, Chinyu lost his appetite when he saw the scene of being sprayed into a mess by Bastius. I have to bury the single first, we still have a place to go. Abandoning these words, Chinyu turned around and left first. Paying the bill, Dasky couldn't help but stun for a moment, and said anxiously, isn't this where you invited me to dinner? Rarely is this my first membership. The first time. Chinyu stopped and gave Dasichi a blank look and said, if you want to see other famous knives, hurry up and bury the list, keep up with me, and don't care if I get lost. Other famous knives. Dasky was stunned for a moment, her eyes brightened immediately, she hurriedly dug out her purse, put the money on the table, and quickly chased it out. Compared with famous knives, it doesn't matter whether it is the first time that Dasichi insisted just now. Seeing Chinyu and the 2 who had disappeared all of a sudden, Bastiu didn't have time to think, and quickly followed. However, he just left. A figure sitting in the corner gently put down the yuhi-tea in his hand, and his face hidden under the cloak revealed a playful smile and said, I didn't expect to encounter such good things at such a time. Thunder attribute devil fruit ability person. My fruit ability may be able to suppress him. This time has enough rest. You 2 newcomers quickly catch up, we are going to start work. Abandoning these words, the man in the cloak also walked out quickly. Immediately behind him, there are 2 figures also wearing cloaks. At the same time, Chinyu led Dasichi to the central square. As the place where Roger, the Pirate King, was executed, this is a place for tourism and a must-see for pirates. However, Chinyu didn't have the mentality of Luffy, and he stepped on the high platform and pretended to be an idiot. Instead, he went straight to the weapon shop next to him. If I remember correctly, there are 2 good and fast knives in this humble weapon shop, namely Shuizo and Sandai Gito. Chinyu has a very high vision for the requirements of the knife, but now, to improve the fidelity of the character template, pretending is the fastest way to wait for me. Although the extent of improvement may be limited. But Chinyu would not give up any chance to pretend. Lord Laxus, do you think there are so-called famous knives in this weapon shop? Bastiu hurried over, looked at the broken shop in front of him, and said, Lord Laxus, if you love famous knives, as long as you join the Navy headquarters, and as a lieutenant general, I promise you that I can find you a famous knife that is not inferior to this girl's hand. At the same time, I can also guide you in the sword technique. I think you are too colored and domineering. If you pair it with the sword technique, your strength will definitely skyrocket. Looking at Bastiu, who said that the stars were flying all over the sky, Chinyu looked back and said, "Your conditions are very good. However, it still doesn't suit me. Also, a lot of things are like fate, just like Shiyu in the hands of me and this girl. When fate arrives, it will be delivered to the door in person. If I push the door in now, I will be able to get two more. Two famous knives." Dusky and Bastiu couldn't help but be stunned. In this sea, as a swordsman, it is not bad to be able to get a famous sword. Now Chinyu opened two hands and sent them to the door automatically. This is a bit to see the famous knife as a street cabbage. Little brother, your joke is not funny. If there is really a famous knife in this shop, I will eat this door. Bastiu couldn't help but said stubbornly. Looking at Bastiu with a stubborn face, Chinyu patted him on the shoulder and said, "Dasky, prepare some tomato chan for him. I'll eat it with this door, I hope it's not iron." Abandoning these words, Chinyu took the lead in pushing the door in. Looking at the mezzanine of the door, it was made of iron, and Bastius couldn't help but stunned. Is this riding a crow's mouth? Welcome. Standing behind the counter, Yuhi's nose-piercing boss glanced up and continued to lower his head to wipe the knife. As an old fried dough stick that has been operating a weapons store for decades, he can tell at a glance whether he is being taken advantage of. As for those pirates wandering at sea, it is even less likely that they have anything to do with the rich man. At least, in his eyes, these are all taken advantage of. However, at the moment when he lowered his head, the boss suddenly raised his head and looked at Shiyu in Dusky's hands, his eyes suddenly lit up. This is a small T-shaped sword with a white lacquer. The blade is like a rain flower. Is it the rain of 50 workers of a good and fast knife? The boss raised the magnifying glass a little and said in a hurry, "It seems that your excellency is someone who knows knives. My small shop, although shabby, still has knives from many famous craftsmen." Quote. Look at the wall hanging over there, but the sharp blade worth hundreds of thousands of Baileys. Once you get started, it's just like a tiger. Looking at it for a while, the spittle-starred boss, Dasichi, was about to say something, but Chinyu was the first to say, "Boss, I only have 100,000 Baileys here, I want two knives." 100,000 Bailey and two knives. The three people present froze in place. Bastiu couldn't help but said, "Little brother, you can't even buy two sharp knives with 100,000 Baileys. If you really want to buy a knife, I can lend you some Bailey." Fate. The simple words came out in a hurry, completely interrupting Bastiu's chattering voice. Seeing that the last chance to extort money was gone, the boss's face turned gloomy, and he said with a cold snort, "Poor and sour devils are also equipped to play with knives. Where 100,000 Baileys can only choose two broken knives, you can choose them yourself. Let's go." Abandoning these words, the boss was obviously too lazy to take care of him, and continued to lower his head and wipe the blade. Looking at this scene, Dusky and Bastiu couldn't help but startled, and there was a hint of embarrassment on their faces. Especially Dasichi, she knew very well that Chinyu had more than 10 million Baileys from extortion. If you really want a knife, before there are no famous knives, it is enough to pick two good knives. However, before they could react, a warm smile appeared on Chinyu's face. Everything he is doing now, but 2 years ahead of schedule. These words and 100,000 Baileys were triggered as if playing a game with conditional cues. As long as it is better integrated into the plot, the chance of getting a famous sword can be upgraded to ultimate. After all, in Chinyu's understanding, any change in the original world may lead to a different parallel dimension. Chapter 532 / Fate. Inside the small weapon shop, the atmosphere suddenly became depressed. Dasichi and Bastiu, even the boss who lowered his head and wiped the knife, looked at Chinyu intentionally or unintentionally. Especially the shop owner, when he saw Chinyu walking straight to the corner where the second-hand knives were placed, his heart seemed to be gradually suspended with the sound of footsteps from the corner of his eyes. At this moment, facing the stalwart back, and the straightforward pace. At this moment, an absurd thought flashed through the shop owner's mind, before he could react. Under the gazes of everyone, Chinyu suddenly stopped his steps, and his right hand stuck out like lightning. The violent scene caused the shop owner's face to change drastically, and he hurriedly said, "Boy, I won't sell that knife, hurry up and get the money back. 100,000 Bailey, you are not worthy of being a swordsman at all." The exclamation made Dasky and Bastiu startled and hurriedly looked at the purple-black blade in Chinyu's hand. A strange color flashed on their faces. They are not ordinary people, of course, they can see the extraordinary at a glance. Dusky quickly flipped through the booklet in her hand, but she didn't wait for her to find out. The words that fell in her ears shook her nerves. One of the 50 craftsmen of the good and fast knife, the third generation Goosh, this is a demon knife. Chinyu pulled out the blade with his backhand, and an inexplicable chill burst out under the cold light flowing from above. You know, this is a demon sword. Then you still dare to ask for it. You know that the swordsmen of all dynasties and those who use the ghost will die. The boss's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly explained, unless you plan to die, this knives can never sell you. Dead. Chinyu smiled playfully. This scene, which fell in the eyes of the three of Dusky, directly touched their nerves. Boss shouted in a hurry, "Boy, what do you want to do? I won't sell this knife." The hasty words came out in a hurry, but unfortunately they didn't wait for them to react. Chinyu suddenly flipped his right hand and threw it directly into the sky. Immediately in public, he closed his eyes and mourned for Sauron for 3 seconds. This is Zoro's play trick. However, in order to increase the fidelity of the character template, Chinyu could only use it politely. The violent scene shook everyone's nerves, watching the flying 3 generations of ghosts, and the moment when Chinyu closed his eyes and stretched out his hand. Everyone's nerves are almost broken. Boy, are you crazy? This knife is very sharp. If you are not careful, your arm will be cut off. The boss roared in a hurry. Too bad it's too late. Even Dasky and Bastius couldn't react at all in the face of this unexpected scene. The only thing that can be done is to watch the 3 generations of Goosh, whose blade glows with cold light, roll in the air, and go straight to Chinyu's arm. PFF'd. The sharp blade stabbed straight into the floor, and Keegan didn't go in. At the same time, it seemed to be inserted into their hearts, which made people feel suffocated. Looking at Chinyu's intact arm, the 3 of Dasichi couldn't help rubbing their eyes. Haha, it seems that my luck is overpowering it. I want this knife. Chinyu smiled playfully. Grabbed the 3 generations of ghosts who were submerged in the floor, and returned to the sheath. Dasky, you can choose another one for me. Looking at Dasichi absent-mindedly, Chinyu spoke up and woke up. There is no way to do this. To get the snow and maximize the force, the most guaranteed way is to follow the original plot. That way there is a sense of triggering a specific conditional cue. Dasichi suddenly woke up. After looking at the 3 generations of ghosts in Chinyu's hands, there were countless little stars in Chinyu's eyes. If it is said, the moment before, Dasichi's feeling for Chinyu was respect and admiration. So now I'm witnessing Chinyu's luck trying the knife with my own eyes. That feeling is like a little fangirl, only to see the male god drooling, and eating can stuff his nostrils away. When Chinyu spoke, Dasichi hurriedly responded, "Wait, Mr. Laxus, I'll help you pick a better one now." Looking at Dusky who was busy all of a sudden, Bastiu also recovered. A moment ago, he was still questioning. Chinyu came to Taobao in such a small shop, it was a complete joke. He never thought that Chinyu would be able to pick up a rare good and quick knife not only as soon as he entered the door, and also staged a scene, the crazy action of luck fighting the demon sword. Most importantly, it turned out to be a success. If you don't see it with your own eyes, who wants to believe that this scene is true? Seeing that Chinyu is now asking Dasichi to find the second one, Bastiu couldn't help but feel a little uneasy in his heart. He was about to say something when he heard the bosses stumble and rushed out from the back warehouse. He also held a blade covered in white cloth in his hand. Seeing this violent scene, Bastiu's heart froze for a while. Recalling what Chinyu said just now, an absurd thought flashed in his mind. Is this riding a fate? Bang! The boss ripped the white cloth away at once, revealing the hidden blade. Originally, it was extremely wretched, and the temperament of Thief Eyebrows and Thief Eyes instantly added a feeling of awe-inspiring and unparalleled, discerning heroes with discerning eyes. One grabbed the blade on the table, and with a clanging sound, he unsheathed it. Under the pressing cold light, the crisp sound of the knife chirping directly attracted Dasiki's attention. When he saw the blade in the boss's hand, he immediately became excited and clenched Chinyu's arm tightly. Mr. Laxus, this is 5 craftsmanship with a good and fast knife, a black lacquer with too much knife, and a small T-shaped snow with a chaotic blade. Chinyu said lightly. In this kind of forced pretense, although it looks like he is carrying a textbook, he must not laugh. With a smile, it was a smash. Once you break the work, after so long, you will fall short. Okay, what a little brother, not only betting with knives, but also someone who understands knives. I never thought that in a backcountry like the East China Sea, a swordsman with such courage as my brother would be able to emerge. The boss's face also brightened. Yuhi raised his voice and shouted in a hurry, my old man is not a good person, but I also know that a good knife must not be buried. Although, this is a broken shop, but this knife is my treasure, and I will give it to you today. The awe-inspiring voice, mixed with an undeniable taste, echoed in the small shop for a long time and could not be dissipated. Seeing this violent scene, Bastiu and Daski were stunned. When they came in, they were still suspicious that Chinyu was bragging. What fate to automatically deliver to your door. However, the scene now presented in front of them can be said to have subverted their cognition. In particular, the shop owner, who looked wretched and developed, actually gave away the famous knife. This made Bastiu's face suddenly mournful, and he was considering whether to go back and have a look. Rainy day, is that door panel the best match for Tomato-chan? Chapter 533 _ from Bar Rock Works. Inside the small weapon shop, the atmosphere suddenly became high. Daski and Bastiu never imagined that the shop owner who looked wretched would give away a valuable famous knife. This scene made Chinyu's words flash through their minds not long ago. When fate arrives, it will take the initiative to deliver it to the door. Thinking of this, Dusky looked at Bastiu beside him with a little pity, and weighed the wooden door with iron. Do you need to add 2 more packs of Tomato-chan? Thank you boss for your kindness. Chinyu rudely reached out and took the snow. The blade is slightly lower to one side, and the cold light is like flowing water, rapidly surging over it. The next moment, a playful smile appeared on his cold and arrogant cheeks and said, Boss, this is a hero who knows heroes. Since it's rare for the boss to be generous, and flies happen to be delivered to the door, then I have to show my ugliness once. The inexplicable voice was slurred out, making Bastius, Dasichi and the others look stagnant. Before they could think about it, they saw Chinyu move. The crackling thunder arc sound, like a sudden thunder. Without any bells and whistles, he stabbed straight towards Bastius. PFF'd. At this moment, the air seemed to be overwhelmed, and was torn open directly. As fast as a thunderbolt, he passed through the void in a posture that was difficult to reach with the naked eye. The violent scene made Bastio's expression suddenly change drastically. However, in the face of this lightning-fast strike, he had nowhere to hide, and the only thing he could do was to watch the attack pass by. Right. This is the only thing that Bastio is fortunate about, that this lightning-fast attack is not locked on him. When he reacted, the iron door with the steel plate behind him was pierced with a bang. Boom. A dull thunder-like collision sounded suddenly. The next moment, the violent air wave rolled back like a frenzy, and the closed door was directly overturned. The violent scene shook everyone's nerves, and they hurriedly looked outside the weapon shop. The first to catch the eye, in addition to the overturned door, there is also a glimpse of the white wall, which was abruptly knocked into the air more than 10 meters away, and then stopped abruptly. However, the originally calm wall was sunken, as if it had been hit by a behemoth. "Old man, what happened?" A burly woman rushed out from behind the weapons store. Looking at the messy store in front of me, I couldn't help but stunned, and said anxiously, "Old man, are you crazy, and people use your family heirloom to make trouble in your store? This is not like you." In the eyes of the woman, in addition to being squeezed dry by himself, this old man's wretched nature is simply engraved in his bones. The character who loves to take advantage of small things, and even plucks chickens when they pass by. Yes, it's a vacuum thrust. This is at least the level of a swordsman. I didn't expect such a good player to appear in Rog Town. The shop owner suddenly woke up and said excitedly, "You mother-in-law, you don't understand anything at all. It's a man's dream. Giving a treasured sword to the strong is totally worth it. Don't get in my way. I want to go out and see this battle." Seeing the old man rushing out like a smoky, completely transgender-like old man, the burly woman was stunned in place. Outside, Chin-Yu took the lead and walked out slowly. Immediately behind him were Dusky and Bastio. For this violent scene, the melon-eating crowd had already gathered around the theater. However, in the face of the snow-white huge wall that appeared out of thin air, the people present obviously couldn't see the truth. It's just that they can't see it, but it doesn't mean that Chin-Yu doesn't know the origin of this person. After leaving the shop, the man followed them all the time. If Chin-Yu remembered correctly, he should be the Ba Rock Work Club, the senior agent MR3. Hee, as expected of the person who defeated Smoky Smog, he almost knocked out my candle wall with a single thrust, but I regret to tell you that my candle wall, once solidified, is comparable in strength. Steel, that's a defense that even Mr. 1 can't break through. A slightly teasing voice suddenly sounded. Soon you can see the candle wall, wriggling like a wave. In the end, under the watchful eyes of the public, a hole the size of Mish was cracked. Immediately, a figure in a small blue suit walked out slowly inside. "This is someone from Ba Rock Works." Bastio's face sank, and he said anxiously, "You bounty hunter, what are you doing here?" In the original work, the Ba Rock Work Club is a force under the command of the Shichibu Sea Sand Crocodile Rock Doll. However, their organizational structure is not a pirate, but a bounty hunter on the bright side. Secretly but stealing chickens and dogs. Although the Navy doesn't have much affection for the Pakistan Rock Work Society, it is undoubtedly not allowed to move them casually on the premise that there is no violation. Hee, let me think about it. Isn't this Vice Admiral Bastius of the Navy headquarters? Why did he come here? Mr. 3 said with a playful smile. However, if your Navy can come here, I will work as Ba Rock. Senior cadres of the society, can't they come? Or, the abuse of power by your Navy is enough to prohibit a law-abiding commoner like me from appearing in any place. The small voice reverberated in the sky, and Bastio became angry all of a sudden. Facing the provocation of Mr. 3, he obviously couldn't refute it. Looking at this scene, a satisfied look appeared on Mr. 3 feet's face, looked at Chin-Yu, and said, "This should be your Excellency Laxus. I am a senior cadre of the Ba Rock Work Club. You can call me Mr. 3. This time I am here to invite you to join our Pakistan Rock Work Club and become a member of the senior cadres. Of course, you can also understand that joining hands with me to the position of President of the Pakistan Rock Work Society, you must know that our Pakistan Rock Work Society has a scale of nearly 10,000 people, and not any naval branch can. The slightly elusive voice fell, and the expressions of Bastius and Dusky suddenly changed. They never thought that this uninvited guest, like Bastius, had the same idea, and it was to recruit Chin-Yu to join the Ba Rock Work Club. At this moment, they looked at Chin-Yu, the only thought that came to their minds. This horse riding is a sweet pastry. However, in the face of the coveted attitude of others, Chin-Yu smiled dryly and touched the tip of his nose. Hee, I'm sorry. If you let me be the president, I might consider it. If you let me help you, this kind of useless person who can't even develop the ability of a devil fruit, I can't bear it. Chapter 534 What is the strongest kendo? Can't bear it. The expressions of the people present changed slightly. As long as they are active in the second half of the East China Sea and the first half of the Great Waterway, and even pirates, they still know a little about the infamous reputation of Ba Rock Works. It can be said that as soon as you are invited in, you will become a senior cadre, which means that there is no shortage of power and money. However, now Chin-Yu wants to become the president as soon as he opens his mouth, which is too crazy. And it also depreciated Mr. Point 3 to be worthless, which is even more shocking. After all, anyone who knows a little about the Ba Rock Works will also know exactly what the nickname Mr. Point 3 means in the Ba Rock Works. Okay, very good, as expected of the person who defeated Smoky Smoker, he has the courage to look down on me. Mr. 3 said hello twice without anger instead of laughing. Huo Ran raised his head. A haze flashed in the depths of his pupils, and then he roared in anger. Today, I will see how you, a knife player, can break through my iron walls. Candle shackles. Like thunder, Mr. 3 turned his hands towards Chin-Yu and suddenly protruded from the air. The endless white candle solution exploded like a frenzy, turned into two huge arms, and attacked Chin-Yu across the sky. The speed is so fast, the short distance of tens of meters will come in the blink of an eye. The violent scene changed Bastiu's face, and he shouted in a hurry, Laxus, this guy is a superhuman devil fruit ability, and the candle wall displayed is comparable to steel, although you can use vacuum slash. But it may be difficult to break through his defenses, so let me support you. As soon as the voice fell, Bastius rushed out in a hurry. However, as soon as he took a half step, he was stopped by Dasiki's detective. No, don't get in the way of Mr. Laxus' battle. Soon, this battle will be over soon. Dusky said timidly, but there was an inexplicable urgency on his face. Faced with this, Bastiu was startled at first when he spoke out of nowhere. Before he could react, he saw Chin-Yu put the snow back into the sheath with his backhand, and at the same time leaned forward slightly. His whole body was like a cheetah, and his muscles were tense to ultimate. The most unbelievable thing is that Chin-Yu slowly closed his eyes in the face of the fast-approaching attack. The words that fell in the ears of Bastiu and the others stirred everyone's nerves. Bastiu, what do you mean by invincibility as a swordsman? Invincible, what is it? Invincible. Bastiu was stunned for a moment, and faced with this sudden speech, he was undoubtedly unable to reply for a moment or three. Looking at Chin-Yu, who was still closing his eyes, and there was an attack close at hand, he shouted in a hurry. Be careful. Boom. The moment the voice fell, two candle tentacles passed directly through Chin-Yu's body. Finally, it hit the heavy floor, and the huge impact shattered the ground. However, this seemingly sharp blow did not splatter at the moment when it penetrated Chin-Yu's body. The posture of standing on the spot, the body swooping forward slightly, is like a phantom, gradually twisting and collapsing between heaven and earth. Phantom. He's on the execution stand. I don't know who exclaimed, and everyone's nerves were suddenly tense. Uchiha Chinyu, who clenched Wishigzu tightly with his backhand, swooped down, and closed his eyes tightly. That familiar voice sounded again, shaking everyone's nerves. Bastiu, you haven't answered me, what is the strongest kendo? The awe-inspiring voice has an undeniable taste. Bastiu was stunned for a moment. At this moment, Chinyu gave him the same majestic feeling he had when facing his teacher Zepha. He subconsciously hurriedly said, he is someone who has been honed deeply and has won the morality of swordsmanship. Is called the strongest swordsmanship, if we say that the strongest supreme swordsman in the world today is one of the 7 Cs, Hokage Mahak. With his low voice, in the face of Bastia's answer, anyone who was present with a little knowledge would agree with him. After all, above the kendo, the eagle eye is like a milestone, standing at the end of the kendo. However, for this kind of question and answer game, Mr. 3 feet's face obviously can't hang. The dignified senior cadre of the Rock Works Society, who came forward to invite him in person, was rejected in public. Then, under the violent attack, people ignored it and played a quiz game. This step on the horse is to rub his face against the ground. Thinking of this, a trace of anger appeared on Mr. 3's face, and he roared. Okay, since you're talking about the so-called kendo, today I want to see how your kendo can break my absolute defense. Candle Champions Cup. The hysterical roar sounded like thunder. The devil fruit ability dormant in the body was directly detonated by Mr. 3. The endless candles gushed out and wrapped around the body, forming a transformer-like armor. The moment he raised his head, the huge candle hand caught Chinyu from the air. However, this time was different from just now. The moment the candle liquid burst out of the air, it formed a sharp spear like a rainstorm and fell towards Chinyu. Seeing this huge scene, Bastiu's expression changed again, and he shouted in a hurry, Your Excellency Laxus, you have asked everything you want to ask. If you really can't help it, let me help you. Wrong. After hesitating out the words, Chinyu suddenly raised his head. The moment he opened his eyes, a flash of thunder flashed in the depths of his deep pupils. The next moment, before everyone could react, the crackling thunder light, under the blooming surface of the body, uttered a voice that shook everyone's nerves. The world's kendo is only fast and unbreakable, the strongest kendo should be me. Boom. Taking one step, the huge execution platform at the foot, symbolizing the end of Roger's life, seems to be unable to withstand this skyrocketing force. Under the watchful eyes of the public, it collapsed and collapsed. Chinyu, who was originally standing on the high platform, seemed to take advantage of the air without paying attention, and Voidlingdu directly took the second step. Before everyone could react, the whole person disappeared out of thin air like a ghost. The next moment, the golden light in the sky skyrocketed, grabbing everyone's vision. When everyone woke up, the sound of thunder roared. The iron spear that was sturdy like steel shot through the sky, and there was a trace of stillness in the air, and the next moment it was in full view. Like a cobweb, it cracked open inch by inch and collapsed between heaven and earth. The violent scene made people's pupils shrink suddenly, but they didn't have time to think about it and hurriedly looked at Mr. 3. However, the first scene that came into view shook the nerves of all of them, and even the eye sockets were split. Chapter 535 _ The shortcut to overcome the skeleton demon. Boom. The dull sound of heavy objects landing resounded. The giant candle giant of 7 or 8 meters, claiming to be comparable to steel, was cut in half. The huge upper body lost its support and slammed to the ground, smashing the rocky floor. Mr. 3, who was originally hiding inside, looked at the front of his throat. The distance was just a little bit, the sharp blade glowing with cold light, his pupils shrunk to ultimate. On the rolling Adam's apple, there is even more hot sweat sliding down. In the face of the violent blow just now, it was as fast as a lightning bolt. In his mind, he still stayed in that moment of the shot. Front of him, this man with a cold and arrogant face, who was close at hand, flashed in Mr. Point 3 feet's mind the underwear he was wearing today, which was impressively white. Too late to think about it, just dig it out by hand. Along with the sound of fabric tearing, a pair of shattered white underwear was pulled out abruptly and swayed directly into the wind. I surrender. White represents sincere surrender. You can't kill me. If you really want to be the president of Baroque Works, I can help you take the position of president, but the president has always been it's very mysterious. If you don't mind, you can be a vice president first. Sound of begging for mercy came out from the mouth of Mr. 3. Looking at the previous moment, the senior cadre of the Baroque Work Club was in a state of arrogance, and kept saying that he wanted to press Chinyu to the ground and rub it against the ground. In a blink of an eye, even the bottom line, no, the bottom pants were torn to shreds as a white handkerchief surrendered Mr. 3. The gap between the front and the back is really a bit too big. If you don't see it with your own eyes, who wants to believe it? The battle that I thought would last for a period of time turned out to be a winner and loser. The world's kendo is only fast and unbreakable, the strongest kendo should be me. The muttered words spit out in the shop owner's mouth. Looking at Chinyu's back, all of a sudden it was shining brightly, and he instantly became stalwart. In front of everyone's eyes, he laughed like a madman. Sure enough, he is a good boy. The heart of the strong is only respected. The world's swordsmanship is only fast and unbreakable. The eagle eyes of the supreme swordsman are all farts in front of him. The hurried voices echoed in the huge square. Bastiu was also stunned, and the huge shark slashing knife clenched in his hand could not help clenching his fingers. Recalling his subconscious answer just now, he could not wait to slap himself directly. In particular, the moment before, he was running on the train with his mouth full, saying that he wanted to guide Chinyu to learn kendo. The battle facing Jinghong's glance right now is all about banning an axe. If there is a dog hole here, he can't wait to go straight into it. Bastiu, do you want to bet on the honor of kendo and fight with me? Chinyu didn't take a look at Mr. 3. The highest realm of pretending is to leave no trace and strike while the iron is hot. A sudden remark, like thunder, detonated in Bastiu's mind. Bastiu looked shocked at Chinyu's understated gesture, and immediately fell to his knees on the ground with a thud. Holding the shark-slashing sword in both hands, he fell to the ground and said in a deep voice, I, Bastius, are willing to give up my own swordsmanship. I hope Teacher Laxus will guide me to defeat the supreme swordsmanship of the skeleton demon. The awe-inspiring voice reverberated on the huge square. At this moment, it seemed as if a magic sound had been poured into it, and there was no way to disperse it for a long time. Looking at the dignified Vice Admiral, he knelt down to a teenager in his early 20s and asked for advice under the watchful eyes of everyone. Who would believe it if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes? A lot of people, but they even rubbed Yuhi's eyes. Do not. It should be said that even Dasichi, who was standing beside him, didn't even think of it. A moment ago, they kept saying that Chinyu would be recruited into the naval headquarters. As a lieutenant general, Bastius, in just half a day, took the initiative to join Chinyu's command. The gap between before and after is undoubtedly beyond her cognition. Brother Bastius, are you crazy? Smoker's roar came from a distance. Soon, he saw Smog, who had displayed his smoke sprayer and arrived at extreme speed, landed in front of Chinyu. Under that gloomy look, a pair of murderous eyes locked on Chinyu's body, and shouted loudly, Laxus, I am now officially arresting you on the charges of attacking the Admiral and destroying the execution platform of Rog Town. Catch, if you dare to resist, don't blame me for being really aggressive. The awe-inspiring words came out. Looking at this violent scene, the eyes of the melon eaters present couldn't help but light up again. The scene that I thought was ending was staged again, and it was really exciting. However, before Chinyu could speak this time, Bastiu had already stood up on the ground, and after clenching the shark-slashing sword in his backhand, he said in a deep voice, "Brother Smog, stop doing stupid things. But Armament Hockey doesn't even have a master, Teacher Laxus, just relying on the elementalized properties of nature-type devil fruits, you cannot defeat them. The most important thing, the teacher is the only shortcut for me to defeat the great skeleton demon. I hope you don't get in the way of my brother, otherwise don't blame me for not remembering the old love." Facing the old grudge with Ain's Ul Gown. In Bastiu's heart, he did not have much complaints about Chinyu killing the Tianlong people as the Bone King. However, when he thought of that gesture, showing a powerful ultimate move, his heart seemed to be branded, like a shadow imprint that could not be eliminated. This time, leave the naval headquarters and look for the so-called new combat power. A large part of it was Bastius who believed that his own strength alone could not overcome the fear left by the Bone King in his heart. I want to use the help of the Navy headquarters to tap more powerful combat power, so as to eliminate the fear of shadows. However, with this thought, I was watching that amazing scene with my own eyes, as well as the attitude of being the only one in the sky and the earth. The fear in Bastius' heart shook for the first time. In his mind, there was a magic sound, as if telling him that he only needed to be under the command of Laxus, who was also a madman, to overcome the fear in the heart. Seeing Bastiu who suddenly drew his knife at him, Smog's face suddenly turned ashen. Just about to say something. An inexplicable chill, like a frenzy, swept the entire square. The sudden scene made people couldn't help but hit a cold shock. Ice crystals formed on the eyebrows of some people. There was also some frost in the surrounding houses. At this moment, the entire Rog town seemed to have fallen into an ice cellar. Feeling the changes in the arena, when Bastiu's face changed drastically, before he could speak, Chinyu had already looked towards the end of the street in the distance. "I didn't expect that the General Qingzi would hang out here, but this way of appearing is a bit cold." Chapter 536 It's on fire. Admiral Aokiji. The expressions of the people present suddenly changed drastically. Feeling the bone-chilling cold, I was still scolding mother in my mouth. However, as soon as he heard Chinyu's words, he just kept his mouth shut. All eyes turned and locked on the tall figure walking slowly at the end of the street. However, before they could react, the green pheasant who came with Kabuto in his pants suddenly raised his head and spit out a biting cold wind. The next moment, the moment his eyes fell on Chinyu, his right hand suddenly caught in the air. The moment when the endless cold air burst out, it turned into a 100-meter ice bird out of thin air. Yeah. Under the sound of birdsong, the 100-meter ice bird suddenly spread its wings and swept away towards Chinyu. The speed is so fast, and the distance of 1 kilometer is just an approximation in the blink of an eye. Facing this violent scene, Bastius grabbed Smog's arm and hurriedly retreated. He clearly knew that they might not be able to resist against the general-level Aokiji. However, Laxus, who was begged by him to be a teacher in front of him, would definitely be able to do it. Nice. The simple word was spit out in Chinyu's mouth. Originally a Mr. 3, he also wondered that he couldn't try dragon-slaying magic. However, Aokiji, who suddenly appeared now, is undoubtedly the best opponent. Huo Ran raised his head and looked at the ice bird that was approaching. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Chinyu stepped out without any fancy. Bang! The dull sound of footsteps exploded like thunder, and at the moment when the heavy rock floor collapsed, Chinyu's right hand suddenly clenched his 5 fingers, and under the endless thunder, the sound of dragon roars madly spread out from his body. Dragon Slayer magic, Thunder Dragon's collapse fist. Boom! With a punch, the void in front of him, like being hit by a heavy hammer, stirred up ripples visible to the naked eye. The thunder light, which was crazily accumulated on the fist, exploded like a frenzy, heading towards the ice bird, and it was a punch in the face. Boom! The sound of thunder, like thunder across the sky, rose straight into the sky. Under the attitude of not showing too much, the 100-meter ice bird shattered away like a piece of paper. The violent thunder, like a horned dragon raging, directly smashed the huge body of the ice bird. As the air waves rolled back, the ice crystals poured down like a blizzard, covering the entire execution square. However, in the face of this bone-chilling chill, the hearts of the people present were even more shocking. No. It should be said that this scene in front of me has a very visual impact and directly hits the taste of the soul. 100-meter ice bird, smashed directly with one punch. That kind of rude and domineering attitude is completely beyond words. However, all of this is clearly just the beginning. The moment the ice bird shattered, the golden thunder magic circle under Chin Yu's feet quickly bloomed. Under the reversal of the violent magic power, the thunder arc flowing. The next moment, without any bells and whistles, the voice of Long Yin roared. Roar of Thunder Dragon. Boom. The magic power accumulated in the lungs exploded like a frenzy. The dazzling thunder light, accompanied by the instant Chin Yu swallowed and swallowed, turned into a golden streak, and with a posture as fast as a thunderbolt, it went straight towards Qingzi. The speed is so fast that it spans a kilometer in the blink of an eye. Wherever it passes, the ground on the street is overwhelmed, and inch by inch quickly shatters. Looking at this fierce and unparalleled blow, Qingzi's lazy and slightly narrowed eyes widened slightly, and without thinking much, he pressed his right hand directly in the air. Ice Dragon. Roar. The cold wind rolled back, and the endless fruit power surged out of Qingzi's hands, turning into an angry dragon and appearing in the world. Facing the roar of the incarnation of Thunder Dragon, without any fancy, they slammed together. Boom. The thunder-like collision sound resounded suddenly, and the thunder light and the ice crystals collided, forming a huge impact, and rolling back around. For a time, the ice crystals in the sky collapsed, making the ice crystal blizzard that shrouded the field more dense all of a sudden. Gives a feeling of reaching out for 5 fingers. However, this feeling has just risen, and the ice crystal storm centered on Chin Yu seems to be stirred by an invisible big hand. The crackling thunder light splashed, and the magic circle under his feet suddenly opened more than 10 meters in size. The next moment, the thunder light in the sky detonated, and the power of endless thunder gathered crazily into the void. An indescribable aura of destruction permeated the air, and the violent thunder light dispelled the surrounding ice crystal blizzard. The violent scene shook everyone's nerves. After seeing the Fangtianji formed by the crazy compression and condensation of the thunder in the sky, the pupils suddenly shrank. Originally, they had the mentality of watching the play, and they wished that Chin Yu and the General Qingzi would fight. But now riding a horse is to be really angry. This kind of attack method is simply more powerful than one move. Especially just a moment ago, he was still running the train with his mouth full, and he wanted to invite Chin Yu to join the Mr. Point 3 of the Ba Rock Works. Looking at this scene right now, it's almost like my feet are chattering. If this shot fell on what he called the impregnable defense, I'm afraid I'll die on the spot. However, in the face of everyone's shock, Chin Yu obviously didn't take it to heart. Ultimate is Laxus. When his eyes crossed the ice crystals in the sky, his eyes suddenly sharpened, and his right hand suddenly caught the sky. The moment the arm muscles bulge like a rock, the next moment there is no trace of fancy. He suddenly threw it towards the green pheasant. Boom. The sound of thunder is endless. The Fangtianji, which is more than 10 meters long and extremely condensed, passed through the sky like a shock. The speed is so fast that it appears in front of Aokiji in the blink of an eye. Facing the mighty blow, the laziness on Qingzi's face disappeared in an instant. After a flash of sharpness flashed in the depths of his pupils, his hands suddenly pressed towards the void. The next moment, the cold and abnormal words were spit out. Ice Age. Bang. The violent cold gushes out like a frenzy. Without any bells and whistles, they collided in an instant. At this moment, there was a stagnation in the air circulating in the four directions, the space seemed to be frozen, and the incoming thunder dragon Fangtianji was directly covered by ice crystals. However, this kind of freezing is undoubtedly reincarnated in the process of being smashed by thunder and repeatedly freezing. Before everyone could react, Qingzi suddenly clasped his hands in the air, and immediately threw it to the sky. Bang! The frozen thunder dragon Fangtianji instantly pierced through the sky and flew into the sky. Accompanied by a deafening explosion, it shattered at a height of 100 meters. Boom! The golden lightning flashed like a horned dragon, and the shattered ice crystals turned into a silver suit covering the sky. Under the violent wind wave, it turned into a huge, dazzling fireworks, and collapsed between the heaven and the earth. Covered most of Rogue Town directly in it. Chapter 537_Washaw Fine Wine. Bang! The thunder and ice crystals scattered in the sky, dazzling like fireworks, shaking most of Rogue Town. Facing Qinyu and Qingzi in the hands of each other, everyone's nerves suddenly tightened, and they couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. The first three moves of this warm-up can be made like this. The extent to which the next battle will evolve cannot be described in words. Especially Smog, who was pulled aside, his face became livid. His smoky fruit is indeed a natural type, but it was in the hands of the glimpse just now. His means, no doubt, is the axe of the class, and it is not enough to see. If, just now, he really did not want to ask Qinyu for trouble, I am afraid that he would have been pressed on the floor and rubbed hard and intimately. Now Smog, the only thing he wants to see urgently is that Qingzi can take this opportunity to take Qinyu down. You can also take a breath for yourself indirectly. However, the idea just popped up. Then I saw the originally tense atmosphere, like ice and snow meeting spring, and quickly melted away. Qinyu's entire body of thunder arcs suddenly dissipated, patted the dust on his body, took out a wine bottle, and raised it towards Qingji, saying, "Brother, do you want some wine?" Liquor. The sudden and unexpected scene made the people in the field stunned for a moment, but they couldn't react. In their eyes, the next thing is a life and death battle. However, Qingji's next reaction confirmed that this match was undoubtedly a friendly match. If this wine doesn't taste good, I don't want it. Qingji shook the ice crystals on her body, and after sighing cold air, she regained her lazy expression again. However, the movement was not slow, and the footsteps stepped down, as if shrinking into an inch, spanning dozens of meters. Under the watchful eyes of the public, 7 or 8 ups and downs appeared in front of Qinyu. After taking the wine bottle, he couldn't help but open it directly. In the world of One Piece, wine is an essential thing. Don't say it's a navy or a pirate, anyone can drink 2 or 3 glasses. However, as a general Qingzi, the requirements for wine have undoubtedly become higher. General Qingzi, why don't you catch him? If you want to drink, our branch has a lot of stock. Smog's expression was stagnant, and he was the first to lose his breath, and hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Catch him." Qingzi raised his brows slightly and said, "I've tried my best just now. However, he is not a pirate, nor did he commit any serious crime, and this is not a sea area under my control." Seeing Qingzi with a natural look on his face, Bastius suddenly smiled bitterly. If it is said that among the 3 generals, Akainu is too serious, and Kizaru clocks into work, that Qingzi is definitely someone who can be lazy, just be lazy. The 3 moves just now are pretty good. In the face of Qingzi's rebuttal, Small was speechless. After all, he was just a small colonel, and if he had been replaced by other generals, he would have already scolded him. Don't worry, if this kid's wine is not good, I might think about it again. Qingzi glanced lazily at Smog, who was full of resentment. Immediately, the cork was opened, and a strong aroma of wine rushed towards him. Let the people who are good at drinking in the field can't help but be startled for a moment. After all, in this world, it has always been the cheapest barley wine and the most expensive sake. This is the first time they have seen a wine with a unique fragrance and an inexplicable umami taste. In the face of this unknown wine, the eyes of those present looking at the glass bottle in Qingzi's hand suddenly became hot. Feeling the change in the atmosphere in the arena, Qingzi is also considered an alcoholic, so he hurriedly raised the bottle in his hand and took a sip into his mouth. The wine that overflowed from the corner of his mouth added an inexplicable mellow taste to the air. Along with that, the gurgling sound of drinking came out. Facing Qingzi's boozy drink, it made many people's eyes go straight. Adam's apple is also rolling up and down quickly. It looked just like salivating. Good wine. After Qingzi poured most of it in one breath, her lazy expression disappeared in an instant. She stuck out her tongue, and on the corner of her mouth came a 360-degree rotation. Looking at the wine bottle in his hand, he said, "The wine is clean and clear, with a mellow taste, even more mellow and sweet. There is also a pure soy-scented taste. The taste is harmonious, the mouth is mellow, and the aftertaste is sweet and refreshing. Although I, Qingzi, are not a good drinker, I have also drank a lot of famous wines in the sea, but I have never tasted your kind of wine. What kind of wine is this?" In the face of Qingzi's inquiry, everyone present felt that it was a beating of the soul. Especially Bastius, who had always loved wine, looked at Qingzi's hand with only 1/3 of the bottle remaining. After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, he said anxiously, "General Qingzi, can you give me a taste? Want to try it out? What's the taste of alcohol and what?" "Me, I want to." Smoker also suddenly spoke. Compared with Bastius, he is more likely to smoke and drink. Moreover, people are floating on the sea, their head is on the bottom of their trousers, there is a reason not to drink alcohol. Looking at the two who were staring at each other, Qingzi rolled his eyes and said, "Dream. However, boy, don't sell it. Did you buy this wine in Rog Town? Tell me about that shop. I'll evacuate him and go back to the Navy headquarters, and I can stop the mouths of the 3 old men." As soon as these words fell, everyone's eyes were locked on Qin Yu's body. After all, the taste of this wine is clearly in front of you. Even the Admiral of the Admiralty praised Yujia's fine wine, who doesn't want to have a few sips? Feeling the staring eyes from all around, Qin Yu reluctantly touched the tip of his nose, considering whether he would be attacked by them if he told the truth. 2 fists are invincible to 4 hands. In case, let them attack them in groups and tear their clothes. That's a big shame. However, when he thought that this is a Chinese wine, Qin Yu sighed and said, "Sorry, this wine is not for takeaway, I brewed it myself. You can call it yubinyaki, which is a steamed drink made from the finest pork belly. Brewing with meat." The people present were stunned. In their eyes, wine can be brewed with various barley, plums and so on. But the wine brewed with fat meat is not only not greasy, but also so mellow and sweet. If you don't see it with your own eyes, who wants to believe it? "Boy, is this wine really made by you?" Qingzi was stunned for a moment, and said in a hurry, "How much do you have? I want all of them. I want some too. I want 10 bottles. I want 100 bottles. Little brother, why don't we talk about agency?" Chapter 538 The scene suddenly boiled over. Looking at the people who were rushing in from all directions, Qin Yu had a headache all of a sudden. This wine was brewed by his mother-in-law when he stayed on 9 Snake Island. I only got it when we met in the Chambord Islands. Originally, I thought that this wine would not be very suitable for people in the world of One Piece. I never thought that as soon as we met, my mother-in-law had already deducted most of his drinks. There are only about 30 bottles of the jade ice burnt that is really hidden in the Bone King's portable space. Chinyu didn't dare to touch it on weekdays, in order to slander the person who had a good drink at a critical moment. I never thought that a mere bottle of wine would cause such a big reaction. Seeing the silhouettes pouring in, Chinyu couldn't care too much. Under the crackling thunder light splashing from his body, the whole person directly thundered into the sky, and there were only words that echoed in the four directions. The hero is sad about the wine threshold, and I admit defeat. Seeing Chinyu, who was completely gone, Qingji was startled at first, then laughed loudly and said, "Sure enough, he is an interesting guy, no wonder even Mr. Carp would make an exception. If I had known that he could make wine, I would have robbed him just now and brought him back to the Navy headquarters, so I won't worry about running out of wine in the future. However, a bottle of wine is indeed a bit small, so just add some water and leave it to the three old men to have a taste." Abandoning these words, Qingji didn't stay any longer, turned around and walked away slowly. In the face of a dignified general, give such a high evaluation. In particular, the jade ice burning like an orphan in his hand. Undoubtedly, the force of this wine is directly deified. After all, they can't taste the wine, and it is even more impossible to grab it in the hands of a dignified general. The only thing that can be done is to find 3 or 5 confidants after drinking enough food and bragging about it. In Rog Town, I have seen what is a good wine and jade ice roast. That is the existence that even the Admiral is greedy for. Ding dong, congratulations on the 10% increase in the fidelity of the host. The current fidelity is 40%, and the next time to unlock the Dragon Slayer Profound Truth, 10% more fidelity is needed. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for getting 500 World Unrest points. The current balance is 1603 points, and 4,397 points are needed until the next random limit is unlocked. The system's light voice suddenly sounded. Chinyu raised his brows and couldn't help being a little surprised. After all, this time, his compulsion is to pretend to be one after another. But he didn't expect that the short fight against General Qingzi in the end would give him 500 turbulence points. However, this distance from the limit of 6,000 obviously still needs effort. The gap with the general, it is not bad to be able to compete to this level with the Thunder Dragon Slayer magic alone. Once Qingzi got serious and started to hang on the wall, Chinyu would definitely not be his opponent. "Thief, hurry up and catch that thief!" A shouting voice suddenly sounded. Chinyu followed the sound and saw a single-masted sailboat quickly sailing out of the group of merchant ships being searched by the Navy at the dock. In the face of this violent scene, the Navy obviously had no time to react, and could only watch helplessly as the sailboat sailed away in the wind. After all, in their eyes, who would want to believe that someone would dare to steal property at the juncture of the Navy's search? Looking further and further away from the pier, a slightly thin figure appeared on the deck of the sailboat, with half a mask on his face. The outline of the pier disappeared completely from sight. The girl with long orange hair secretly breathed a sigh of relief and sat down on the deck of the ship. However, this relaxed attitude only lasted for a few seconds, and the next moment I saw the treasures piled up on the deck of the ship. The girl's beautiful eyes were smiling like Kiba, and then she laughed and said, "This time it's really going to be developed. I thought that in the town of Rog, which is close to the Great Waterway, the merchants and pirates who haunted were all tough guys. I didn't expect that I would be able to succeed so easily. Let's say there are 5 million Baileys here, and I'm only 10 million away from my goal. As long as I make a few more trips, I will definitely be able to raise enough money." Having said that, the girl with long orange hair couldn't help clenching her fists. Just as he was about to take off the mask on his face, an unexpected voice suddenly came from the railing behind him. What's the matter? The dignified little thief cat is complacent for the sake of 5 million Baileys. Your ambition is too small. Phew. The girl's expression changed drastically, her nerves suddenly tense. She didn't have time to think about it. She hurriedly rolled a carp and bounced directly on the deck. At the same time, his right hand touched his waist, and the moment a shrunken iron rod fell in his hand, it was suddenly pulled directly behind him. Boom! The dull metal crashing sound resounded suddenly. The long-haired girl looked overjoyed, and hurriedly looked back. The sight made her pupils shrink. I saw the iron rod fall on Qin Yu's arm, like hitting a rock, giving people a feeling of motionless. You, who are you? These are my things. If you dare to rob my Bailey, I will call. The girl opened her hands anxiously and stopped in front of the treasure. Seeing this kind of temperament that regards money as fate, Qin Yu looked up and down. The long-haired girl with a good figure said, "You call. I think those guys at the dock will be very happy to see you call help, then watch me rob you of something. Of course, if you don't shout, we might still be able to make a deal." What artificial movement? Don't come here. Was a hint of Yui dizziness on the girl's face, and she quickly changed the subject, saying, "What is the deal you just said? Maybe we can really achieve a win-win situation." After a short fight, the girl clearly recognized the difference in strength between the two sides. There is a plan to slow down the troops right now. Of course, we can't let it go. Looking at the little clever ghost in front of him, Qin Yu smiled helplessly, and reached out and rubbed her head directly. The violent scene made Nami startled for a while, and was about to shake off this familiar uncle. But the words that fell in her ears made her stunned for a moment. "I'm a bounty hunter from Fairy Tale. I can help you kill anyone, but the premise is that the price of my shot is very high, and it needs 100 million. 1 billion. Hearing the end, Nami, who was very sensitive to the amount of money, suddenly shrank her pupils. 100 million, that is the goal that Nami spent her whole life working on in the first half of her life. It can be said that this time, getting these more than 5 million Baileys by accident in Rog Town this time was entirely due to luck and risking his life. However, the uncle in front of him, as soon as he opened his mouth, was killing one person by 100 million. It gave her the feeling that stepping on a horse would kill her. Chapter 539 _ 1 billion kills one person. For Nami, this is simply astronomical. Do not. It should be said that this is nonsense at all. If she had the money, she would have already bought Kokoja village. As for spending 100 million, hire this guy who suddenly appeared in front of him to kill. For the miser's Nami, she was digging pieces of flesh on her body. Moreover, in Nami's eyes, even the Navy branch in charge of garrisoning the waters near the village of Kokoja did not dare to move the dragon that offered a reward of 20 million. Not to mention, the nameless person in front of him. Facing the evil dragon that has accumulated in front of her all the year round, it has already left an indelible shadow in Nami's heart. Murlocs are much stronger than humans. What's the matter, are you not willing? Qin Yu smiled and rubbed Nami's hair again. I have to say, if Dasichi is stupid and sweet. The feeling that Nami gave to Qin Yu was that of a thorn, a little pepper. Coupled with the degree of advanced development, it is simply a unique flavor. However, this time Nami clearly reacted, and quickly avoided Qin Yu's head-to-head killing, took a few steps back nervously, and said in a hurry, why do you say that you want 100 million Baileys as soon as you open your mouth? Do you know the dragon? Also, I don't have 100 million Baileys. If you want to rob my Baileys, I will fight you hard. Nami, who was dancing like Kiba's claws all of a sudden, looked like she was going out of her way. For Bailey's sake, isn't that stance even afraid of being X? Why don't you talk? If you're scared, get out of here. Nami shouted in a hurry. However, those long, trembling legs clearly betrayed her thoughts. Although Nami believed that Chinyu was not the dragon's opponent, the sudden attack just now was easily disintegrated by Chinyu. Also let Nami know that she is not Chinyu's opponent. Just thinking that these treasures are related to her redemption of Kokoja village, she couldn't help biting Kiba to the last line of defense. Hee, don't worry, I'm just a person who likes to talk about business. If you don't want to, I won't force it. Chinyu laughed dryly and said, however, we can change the transaction method. I owe a navigator, join Fairy Tail, and I can give you a fortune. As he said that, Chinyu took out the black gold card he got in Udon's hands and threw it to Nami, who couldn't return to God. She had planned to say no, but when she saw the color of the card in her hand, her pupils shrank suddenly. Black gold card, how many Baileys are there? For Nami, who has a bounty, she has always liked to hide money under the orange tree at home. After all, this kind of black gold card is only available with the legitimate official silver account and the underground black market. Moreover, people who hold such black gold cards need to have more than 10 million deposits at least, and only have good strength. Of course, for pirates, no one is willing to put the hard-earned money back into the hands of others. It seems to be more than 10 million. This should be enough to satisfy your appetite. Chinyu had already expected Nami's reaction, laughed dryly, and reached out to probe Nami's head. Faced with this violent scene again, Nami was stunned at first, and was about to dodge one or two, but was abruptly stopped by the words that fell in her ears. He could only bite the little tiger Kiba and silently protested with his beautiful eyes. What's wrong? There are more than 10 million Baileys, and you don't need to do anything. Can you just touch your head for interest? Chinyu said with a smile. However, the oranges on your hair taste good, and I will pay you back in the future. To taste more. Also, if you want to accept my payment, you should also leave a mark. Join the mark of Fairy Tail. Mark of Fairy Tail. Hearing Qian, Nami's eyes had already turned into Bailey's shape, but in the face of Fairy Tail, this obscure group, she was still a little puzzled. More than 10 million, to recruit navigators, that is from Rog Town to Coco West Village. Now dragging her to join is beyond expectations. What's the matter? Haven't made up your mind yet? I'm so stupid with money. If you don't want it, I can find someone else. Chinyu looked at Nami. The guild setting of Fairy Tail is very strange. If you want to improve the realism of Laxus, the establishment of the guild is the first major event among them. At the same time, it is also necessary to increase the loyalty of the members to Fairy Tail, otherwise the mark of Fairy Tail will not respond. All of this is due to Mebus in the original book. Otherwise, if Chinyu is willing to accept people casually, as long as Chinyu is willing to throw money out, he will have as many people as he wants. I do. Nami clenched the black gold card in her hand. Just now she accidentally got a vote in Rog Town, and she still owes about 10 million from 100 million Bailey. Right now, as long as you get this black gold card, you can collect 100 million to redeem the village of Kokoja from the evil dragon. As for the time, whether or not to mix with Chinyu is another matter. After all, over the years, she has done a lot of escaping things for Bailey. Looking at Nami with a face full of money fans and promises, Chinyu of course knew what she was thinking, patted her head with a smile, and said, roll up your left sleeve. Left hand. Nami couldn't help but startled, her left arm had the mark of the dragon pirates tattooed. Now exposed, I am afraid it will not be worth the loss. Don't worry, no matter who you are, if you wear the mark of Fairy Tail, you are my family. Chinyu said to himself. Don't forget, I'm a fool for money, and I believe that no one doesn't like the Gold Master's father. Looking at Chinyu who had suddenly become stinky, Nami rolled up her sleeves after hesitating for a moment. After all, in her eyes, as long as you collect 100 million Baileys, you can redeem the Kokoja village. At that time, she will be able to withdraw from the dragon pirates, and this so-called identity mark does not need to be left. Looking at the arm like suet and white jade, the mark of the ferocious pirates left on it. In the depths of Nami's pupils, there was a flash of disgust, and she said with a righteous and awe-inspiring attitude, "You can tattoo whatever you want. But please hurry up, I'm running out of time." For Nami, she had waited 5 or 6 years to collect 100 million Baileys, but now it is rare to collect enough. Of course, he wanted to fly back to Kokoja village with his wings attached. However, as soon as these words fell, she saw Chinyu's warm hand covering her jade arm recklessly. Yuhi's cheeks were flushed, he was about to scold the rude person. However, he saw that Chinyu had moved his hand away, and the mark that originally belonged to the evil dragon pirates had long since disappeared. Instead, it was a blue fairy tale mark. Chapter 540-Tall Sailor. Are you doing a trick? Nami couldn't help but startled. She is very clear about this tattoo mark, but it cannot be washed away by ordinary means. At the moment, Chinyu gently touched it with his hand and disappeared, which was indeed unexpected. Okay, now you have joined us in fairy tale. I still have work to do next, and I'll meet you when I'm done. Chinyu patted Nami's shoulder with a smile. Hearing these words, Nami was immediately overjoyed. For her, it was impossible to get rid of Chinyu without her lips and tongue. Quickly clenched the black gold card in his hand and said anxiously, "Then I'll go first. There is a small boat over there, you can sit and leave." Boat. Chinyu rolled his eyes helplessly. Nami, who was crossing the bridge and pulling the board, bounced directly on her smooth forehead and said, "No need, see you next time." Leaving these words, a crackling arc of thunder was circulating on Chinyu's body, and the next moment, the whole person turned into a light of thunder, rising straight into the sky. The violent scene made Nami stun to the ground, and the black gold card clenched in her hand also fell on the deck. It took 7 or 8 seconds before she recovered. After confirming again and again that Chinyu was completely gone, Nami quickly picked up the black gold card on the ground and clenched it tightly in her hand. When I thought about it, after 5 or 6 years of hard work, I finally collected 100 million. The excitement in Nami's heart was completely uncontrollable. He quickly looked at the recording pointer and drove the boat to the village of Kokoja. At the same time, 3 figures gathered here on the pier of Rog Town. The leader was the gloomy smoker. When he thought of what had just happened, it was a shame for him. However, based on the Navy's eyeliner, Smog also confirmed Chinyu's whereabouts. After leaving Rog Town, he couldn't help but snorted coldly and said, "It's really fast, it's just Brother Bastiu, and you little girl, I'm afraid it has been abandoned." "I see you little girl, you are also holding a famous sword in your hand, and your strength is not bad. It is better to join my command. I can recommend you to become a lieutenant colonel, and you can receive 300,000 Bailey's salary a year, which is a good deal." Errand. In the process of coming, Smog also found that Dusky's physical fitness and agility are quite good. Most importantly, she is the first member of the so-called fairy tale under Chinyu. At present, in terms of force, Smog can't beat Chinyu, but it would be good if Chinyu could be embarrassed by this poaching method. It's just that as soon as these words fell, I saw Dusky holding Chiyu in his hands, shaking his head again and again. I don't need it, Senior Basti, why don't we look for Mr. Laxus everywhere?" "Don't." Smog's face sank, looking at the stubborn Dasky, he said in a deep voice, "Do you think the pay is not enough? If you are willing to join me, I can consider it and let you upgrade to 100,000 Bailey's remuneration, or say, how much he remunerates you, I will give you double in private." A low voice, with a sense of urgency. Seeing that Smog, who was planning to defeat Chinyu in a certain sense, would do such a thing that he usually despises. Bastiu shook his head helplessly and said, "Brother Smog, you don't understand, there is no salary for joining Fairy Tale. If you have to say it, it's probably a charisma." At least, in my eyes, he has a unique personality charm, which is definitely not comparable to ordinary people. Charm of personality. Smaug's expression froze. Seeing that Dusky also nodded again and again, just as she was about to say something, there was an awe-inspiring sound of breaking through the air in the distance. Before they could react, Li Guang made a detour in the sky and bombarded the pier directly. You guys are here too. Qin Yu restored Laxus's original aloof character, glanced at Smaug, and said, time is running out, we should set off. Just now I found a good sailor sergeant, it's just that she's in some trouble. Navigator. Bastiu was stunned for a moment, and hurriedly said, Mr. Laxus, in fact, I also know navigation. Teacher, you don't need to go to great lengths to find a navigator. For any navy, just come out of the headquarters training camp. All of them will learn some basic knowledge of sailing, among which, looking at the recording pointer, normal sailing is an indispensable means. As a person who travels at sea, you don't even know basic sailing skills. Smaug heard the words, and immediately smelled a chance to regain his position. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw that Qin Yu ignored him and said to Bastiu, can you draw nautical charts, listen to the wind to identify the weather, watch the waves to know the swirl, etc. In the original novel, Nami is a genius navigator. Even as a Murloc, she is known as the evil dragon who is most familiar with the sea, but she covets Nami's sailing skills. It is for this reason that they use the Kokoja village to blackmail Nami. In the following plot, even the legendary Golden Lion Shiji also saw Nami, and after the horrific voyage, he attacked the Straw Hat Pirates and forcibly took Nami away. Draw a nautical chart and listen to the wind to tell the weather. Listening to these words, let alone Bastius, even Smaug and Dusky were stunned. At least, in their eyes, who understand these things, without exception, are not tall navigators. Facing Qin Yu's rhetorical question, Bastius said awkwardly, look, it seems that this time, the teacher has found an old Shingzhen. However, in order to sail on the sea and ensure safety, this old Shingzhen is indeed necessary. Although he is a little old, the teacher is still thoughtful. We should take care of us on the way. Do we need to leave now? Looking at Bastiu who patted his ass jerky, Qin Yu sighed helplessly, patted his shoulder and said, it's not suitable for you to pat him, so be careful to pat him on the horse's leg. By the way, aren't you a lieutenant general? Get me a warship to use first. Warship. Bastiu couldn't help but stunned for a moment, and said with a slightly livid expression, Teacher, General Qingzi and I have resigned for the time being, so we can't requisition the warship now. Sister Dasky said just now, Teacher, don't you have more than 10 million Baileys, so you can buy a good ship? More than 10 million Baileys. Qin Yu touched the tip of his nose helplessly. At this moment, he really thought that he was a little stupid, and he even dug out the old bottom at one time. Coughed dryly and said, I just gave them all away. There are quite a few boats here. Let's grab one at random. Or, see who doesn't have eyes, let's grab it. Seeing Qin Yu who was complacent and robbing him, Smaug, who was standing behind him, suddenly had a black line on his face. Even the phalanx crackled. This riding horse ignored his dignified naval captain as the heir.